Chapter 1912, Black Hole Disintegration. Chapter 1912, Black Hole Disintegration. You are seeking death. Seeing Empyrean Primordius hurtle towards him, the good fortune Saint Sovereign began to panic. Even if he was stronger, having to control the incomparably powerful Grand Mist Spirit Bead Black Hole to attack the divine natural sealing space had caused him to exhaust all of his energy. This was an Azura decree, a beyond divinity level treasure. How could it be easy to break through it? Yet, in this crucial moment, Empyrean Primordius intended to strike him at his weakest. The good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't have any methods to deal with Empyrean Primordius attacks. At this time, a savage killing intent burst out from Empyrean Primordius' eyes. He brought his arms together, his two bone blades extended outwards. The dark and dense blades shined with a cold divine light, slashing straight towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign's throat. And the good fortune Saint Sovereign wasn't able to block this attack. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was enraged to the peak. He was clearly far stronger than Empyrean Primordius, and the ancient remnant races were nothing but bugs he didn't place in his eyes. And yet this crowd of bug-like existences had forced him to this step. There was no road to heaven, no gates to the earth. Die. Empyrean Primordius had already recklessly burnt his blood essence. With his original mortal bodily strength, after burning the entirety of his blood essence, he should have been able to rival a true divinity, and now he was even supported with the Azura decree, the word of faith. Empyrean Primordius' body was covered in black flames. Wherever he went, the void was shattered, everything was crushed. Empyrean Primordius' strike could not be blocked by an ordinary true divinity. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was naturally capable of blocking such a strike, but now he didn't have the strength to do so. Seeing the bone blade soon about to slice through his throat, the good fortune Saint Sovereign fiercely grit his teeth and desperately attack. Crack, crack, crack. He howled into the heavens. Scales formed all over his body. In this life or death moment, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had activated his body metamorphosis. The saints were a body transformation-focused race that was also divided by the quality of their bloodlines. Amongst the saints, martial artists with formidable bloodlines could metamorphosize their bodies, galvanizing their greatest strength. The good fortune Saint Sun and Imperial Prince Naki were examples. But the good fortune Saint Sovereign could not remember how many years it had been since he had used his bloodline power to activate body metamorphosis. This was because he simply never needed it. In his ordinary state, he was almost the greatest powerhouse of the 33 heavens. After fusing together with famine, he was nearly invincible. The good fortune Saint Sovereign never would have dreamed there would be a day when he would be forced to use his body transformation by a bunch of ant. Get out of my way. The good fortune Saint Sovereign exploded into a roar, his fist smashing outward. His fist was covered with scales and his muscles bulged out like the claws of a dragon. This fist broke apart the void, colliding with Empyrean Primordius' bone blade. Catcher. With a loud crack, the bone blades shattered. Even if this was a hasty blow, the strike of the good fortune Saint Sovereign possessed unimaginable power. However, the moment the fractured bone blades shattered, they still tore through the good fortune Saint Sovereign's protective astral essence and stabbed into his chest. At the same time, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's fist smashed into Empyrean Primordius' chest. Bang! Empyrean Primordius' towering figure violently shook. His ribs caved in and he spat out blood as he was sent flying backward. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's strike had heavily wounded Primordius, but his mortal body had been stabbed by Empyrean Primordius' bone blade. Moreover, because the good fortune Saint Sovereign had to stop what he was doing to attack Primordius, the Grand Mist Spirit Bead Black Hole began to spin out of control. Whirl, whirl, whirl. The pitch-black surface of the black hole violently clashed with the divine natural sealing space. A horrifying tide of energy burst outward. Because the good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't want to give Empyrean Primordius or the ancient remnant races any chance to escape, he had poured all his energy into the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to send out an attack. This terrifying black hole could ruin a galaxy. Its strength was beyond powerful. The power that the good fortune Saint Sovereign cast out was absorbed into the black hole, causing it to accumulate more and grow larger. Within, Dangerous streams of power grinded against each other, squeezing each other. Now that he had lost control of the black hole, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion changed. He could feel the strength within the black hole begin to contract inwards, causing massive tracts of space to collapse and implode. This entire process was like the explosion of a universe, the terrifying contraction that occurred after it had expanded to its limits. It had to be known that every wisp of power within the black hole was highly tempered and incredibly pure. It was extremely terrifying. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion became increasingly ugly. Once the strength sealed within the black hole was reduced to the peak, it would then explode. The following annihilating strength would create unimaginable destruction. This was the same as dozens of the good fortune Saint Sovereign's attacks together. It simply could not be withstood. Grand Mist Spirit Bead, reverse. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion was fierce. He roused the power of the Grand Mist Spirit Bead with all of his strength, trying to reverse the energies within and neutralize the black hole. Excessive consumption of energy caused all of the good fortune Saint Sovereign's blood vessels to bulge upwards and burst open. At this time he was completely overdrawing on his strength. He forcefully sucked all of this collapsing energy into the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. However, wasn't wanting to neutralize all of the energy in a black hole on the verge of explosion easier said than done, especially in such a short period of time? The current good fortune Saint Sovereign was now a spent force. Rumble, rumble, rumble. After being neutralized by the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, the black hole didn't explode. But it started to break apart. In this case, waves of energy still shot outward. They were like arrows, each wisp capable of crushing celestial bodies. Whoosh! Black fluctuations of energy crashed into famine. The mountainous expanse of flesh and blood seemed to have been cut open by the blade of a divine god. In an instant, dreadful wounds as deep as canyons formed on Famine's body. Another energy fluctuation passed over Famine, severing 7 or 8 of its bone dragon tentacles. Whoosh! 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 Waves of black hole power slashed through the void. Famine had suffered heavy damage. Ah! The good fortune Saint Sovereign howled. His hair was disheveled and his body was dyed in blood. He simply couldn't deal with the stormy power of this black hole. If this continued, then Famine would suffer inconceivable damages. This was because the black hole power possessed a swallowing attribute. It would drain a massive amount of Famine's blood essence. The good fortune Saint Sovereign bit down on the tip of his tongue and black light rose in his pupils. The pure source power of a true divinity began to gush out from him. As this source power appeared, even the universe started to shake. Countless lines of the great Tao gathered and the good fortune Saint Sovereign's aura changed. Even his astral essence turned pure gold in color. In that moment, with the good fortune Saint Sovereign as the center, a terrifying energy vortex arose within the universe. For billions and trillions of miles around, all of the power of good fortune began gathering towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign. This strength was not just heaven and earth origin energy, but all sorts of power from the world. Heat, light, small ions, interstellar dust, everything began converging on the good fortune Saint Sovereign. This was the good fortune divine art, the technique to seize the power of good fortune. The so-called good fortune was the sum of all matter and life besides intelligent life forms. By drawing out the power of good fortune within the universe for an attack, the power behind this ability could be imagined. This was an incomparably overbearing and tyrannical cultivation method. The good fortune Saint Sun had once used it to contend with Lin Ming, but now that it was displayed in the hands of the good fortune Saint Sovereign, the might of the good fortune divine art was beyond terrifying. With the support of the good fortune divine art, beams of golden astral essence gathered around Famine, forming a giant circular golden shield. Within this shield, small figures floated up and down. These were the good fortune Saint Sovereign's true divinity incarnations. Each small figure represented a wisp of the universe's source strength, perfect and without flaw. The moment that the Grand Mist Spirit Bead began to veer out of control and the good fortune Saint Sovereign wasn't able to divide his attention too much, he didn't hesitate to use his source strength with the good fortune divine art. This round golden shield was a peerless martial skill from the good fortune divine art, Myriad Spirit Creation Shield. The myriad spirit creation shield began to shine. An old and distant radiance emanated outwards as sounds of the great Tao filled the air. It was like a most precious treasure had appeared from the birthing of the cosmos, representing eternity and immortality. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The violent black hole strength smashed against the myriad spirit creation shield, colliding and erasing each other. Massive amounts of source strength dissipated, however the impact wasn't able to reach the good fortune Saint Sovereign. But at this moment, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had also consumed a tremendous amount of his source strength and greatly overdrawn himself. His fused body of famine was already cut and pitted, with massive and alarming fissures crossing it. Even so, there were still those bone dragon tentacles that wrapped around the Ark of Hope. Over half of them had been cut off, but there were still a dozen some of them that tenaciously clung to the spirit ship. Although the good fortune Saint Sovereign could have withdrawn his bone dragon tentacles to help himself defend, he would rather suffer heavier injuries than allow the Ark of Hope to escape. He didn't want to let the ancient remnant races flee, especially Lin Ming. The good fortune Saint Sovereign had a dark uneasiness in his heart. He had to kill Lin Ming as soon as possible, but the speed he was growing at was far too fast. This time, he had suffered a giant loss. Although it seemed that it was because the ancient remnant races had joined together with Empyrean Primordius, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had a strange premonition that in this battle, Lin Ming had played an irreplaceable role. He needed to kill this human youth. He could not allow him to freely grow. He could not even give him the smallest chance. "You die for me." The good fortune Saint Sovereign's face distorted. His mouth was wet with blood. He reached out his right hand and grasped towards the Ark of Hope. With explosive cracking sounds, the 20-plus bone dragon tentacles around the Ark of Hope began to wildly contract, constantly crushing down on the Ark of Hope's protective shield. Even though the good fortune Saint Sovereign had been heavily wounded, he still had more than enough power to smash the Ark of Hope and the ancient remnant races to pieces. The Ark of Hope's energy reserves rapidly fell. Through the successive attacks and counterattacks, the Ark of Hope had already used up over half its energy. In this situation, the Ark of Hope wasn't able to last much longer. As for the good fortune Saint Sovereign, although he was exhausted, a starving camel was still larger than a horse. The vitality of famine was strong to the point of disbelief. "Die!" The good fortune Saint Sovereign roared out. But at this time, he saw a black shadow fly through a massive wound in his body and drill into it. Chapter 1913, Point. Chapter 1913, Point. What? The good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion changed. All of his attention just now had been focused on the Ark of Hope. He wanted to obliterate the Ark of Hope's protective shield and then swallow it, along with the primal god race and Lin Ming. But during this time period he had suffered a sneak attack. "It's you again." The good fortune Saint Sovereign fiercely raged, furious. Famine's body was far too large. After the black hole broke apart, Famine had been forced to withstand over 90% of the black hole's turbulent energy shockwaves. And Empyrean Primordius had hidden himself behind Famine. The moment the good fortune Saint Sovereign blocked the black hole's energy shockwaves with the myriad spirit creation shield, Empyrean Primordius had taken this opportunity to strike. And what was most ruthless was that Empyrean Primordius didn't attack the exterior of Famine's body, but instead chose to rush through the horrifying tearing wounds caused by the black hole energy and break into its body. Such a sinister method caused the good fortune Saint Sovereign to fume with rage. Puff! Blood began to gush out of Famine like a river from the wound where Empyrean Primordius had rushed in. In that moment, Empyrean Primordius had sliced open a giant blood vessel within Famine. This blood vessel was over 1,000 feet thick and it was cut in half by Empyrean Primordius' bone saber. Underneath a terrifying blood pressure, blood as hot and thick as magma gushed out into space, soaring for thousands of miles. "Just die." The good fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes gleamed with a vicious light. He changed his plans. He had to kill Empyrean Primordius first, otherwise with Empyrean Primordius freely rampaging through his body, his wounds would only become heavier. Whoosh! A bone dragon tentacle drilled into Famine's body like a leech, chasing straight after Empyrean Primordius. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was ruthless. He ignored any collateral damage to Famine's body and vowed to catch and kill Empyrean Primordius. As the bone dragon tentacle drilled in, it constantly transformed. It became sharper, more dense, similar to a blood-red spear. And at this time, Empyrean Primordius rushed forwards through the mass of flesh and blood. Before this, Empyrean Primordius' left bone blade had been shattered by the good fortune Saint Sovereign's punch, and his left hand had nearly broken apart at the same time. Now all he had left was the bone blade on his right elbow. Using this bone blade, Empyrean Primordius hurtled forwards with irresistible momentum. He constantly tore through Famine's body, drilling into it like a razor-sharp cone. "Since you've come, don't think of leaving." The good fortune Saint Sovereign surged with energy. Waves of the power of good fortune swelled towards him, and Famine's body violently wriggled. At the same time, the grand mist spirit bead floated above the good fortune Saint Sovereign's head. A stream of ancient runes rushed out, all of them entering into Famine's body. With the support of this powerful energy, Famine's flesh and blood tightened, becoming more dense even as energy recklessly coursed through it. These waves of energy smashed onto Empyrean Primordius like an endless tide. The blood became increasingly hot and also started to be filled with a horrifying corrosive power. This corrosiveness wasn't from physical poisons but from the heavenly Tao laws, in other words, the poison laws. Even if a true divinity spirit treasure were bathed in Famine's blood, it would still slowly lose its spirituality. Empyrean Primordius fought with everything he had. As he did, he felt the blood splashing on him become as dangerous as acid. As long as it touched him, it would emit puffing sounds and vanish in a plume of white smoke. The pitch-black bone armor on his body began to melt away at a speed visible to the eyes. After a while, a plate of bone armor as thick as a large fist fell down. The bone armor that was originally as smooth as a mirror began to form holes due to the corrosive blood. Some of that corrosive blood even splashed onto Primordius' pupils. On his deep pupils, runes began to collapse. The sight in front of Empyrean Primordius became hazy and dim, as if he would lose his vision at any moment. Roar! Through the layers of hurdles, Empyrean Primordius angrily howled out. A radiant light the color of fresh blood shot out from his pupils, as bright as a sun. The corrosive bodily fluids of the good fortune Saint Sovereign were burned away by the source essence energy of Empyrean Primordius. A boundless shaking power rushed out, allowing Empyrean Primordius to continue hurtling into the deepest depths of Famine. The situation is dire. Within the Ark of Hope, an ancient race, Empyrean felt his mind tighten. Every single action and move that Empyrean Primordius took affected the hearts of the powerhouses within the Ark of Hope. They could all feel that at this moment, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's body was surging with a potent power of good fortune. His fused body bloomed with a blinding light. Every pore shone, and the flesh and blood seemed to come to life, making the heart race with fear. That strength was so great that even the void would be swallowed up. But after Empyrean Primordius had hurtled his way into Famine's body, his aura became isolated from the outside without any way to sense his movements. Even the tear that Empyrean Primordius used to drill into Famine was slowly being covered over by wriggling flesh. Primordius is in danger. Di Wuhen and Tobague's faces were dripping with sweat. Whether it was the Celestials or God race, their old leaders had died in battle for their people. Now, the destiny of their races had been left in their hands, and they had become the true commanders who had to lead the ancient remnant races to escape and survive. The pressure on their shoulders could be imagined. The good fortune Saint Sovereign suffered a backlash from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead and has taken heavy damage. He even overdrew his essence energy to activate the good fortune divine art. Just how much strength could he possibly have left? A god race Empyrean spat out with hate thick in his voice. Even a centipede that is chopped in half won't die. Famine's vital life force is too powerful. Even if it only has 1/10 of its strength remaining, it isn't something we can hope to contend with. Di Wuhen took a deep breath. At this time, he was nearly out of his wits and out of his mind. Once Empyrean Primordius died, the rest of them would soon follow. As everyone was anxious and worried, in a corner of the control room, Lin Ming had closed his eyes deep in concentration. Within his spiritual sea, the magic cube slowly revolved, projecting out a phantom of Famine's body. His spiritual sea was nearly isolated from the world. All of his soul force was poured into the magic cube as he sensed the universe through it. He was using the magic cube to search for that one point. Beside Lin Ming, Smokeless was startled. She could faintly feel that at this moment, there was suddenly a strange change in Lin Ming's soul force, one that was hard to fathom. It was like waves of a vast and boundless strength, similar to a spiritual god, began to gush out from Lin Ming's body, so profound that it caused the heart to race. Other than Smokeless, many Empyreans also discovered that something unusual was occurring to Lin Ming's aura. What they didn't know was that this aura, like a spiritual god that made their hearts race, didn't come from Lin Ming, but originated from the magic cube. If there was a powerhouse that had a deep understanding of the magic cube, they could rely on this feeling alone to confirm that the magic cube was within Lin Ming's body. This was because the momentum emitting from his body was too grand, too unique. But now, no one could care to delve into this. Lin Ming had created far too many miracles. If they could feel a divine nature from his body, no one would think it was strange. Lin Ming. Di Wuhen could see that between Lin Ming's eyebrows, another eye had appeared. This eye shined out with a brilliant divine light, and within his eyes, the phantom of a grey cube seemed to spin around. This cube had mysterious markings that he had never seen before. As this phantom cube appeared, it also instantly hid itself. But as Di Wuhen looked into Lin Ming's eyes, he had a feeling as if he were losing himself. This feeling left him stunned. As a peak Empyrean, it was naturally impossible for him to be enchanted by the eyes of a peak Holy Lord martial artist. Was it that phantom cube which had appeared for a brief moment just then? Di Wuhen had no time to think about it. At this time, Lin Ming stood up and asked, "Let me try once." Millimeter? Everyone was shocked. What did Lin Ming want to try? Could it be that he wanted to deal with the good fortune Saint Sovereign? That was impossible. They watched as Lin Ming slowly walked to the side of the Azura primal god cannon. Soul force wildly bubbled around his body. Rays of his soul force gathered around him, forming a beam of light in the void, as thick as a baby's arm. This beam of soul force connected to the Azura primal god cannon. Beneath the revitalization of Lin Ming's soul force, the Azura primal god cannon began to emit waves of faint spiritual light. So he wanted to release the Azura primal god cannon once more. Lin Ming, you want to use the Azura primal god cannon? The Azura primal god cannon is strong, but famine is just too powerful. It is nearly invincible. Can you use the god cannon to threaten its life? The Azura primal god cannon was extremely powerful. With a direct strike, it could even easily and instantly kill a peak Empyrean. But to use it to blast famine, it was actually far too weak. After all, even in Lin Ming's hands, the Azura primal god cannon could only display a limited degree of strength. It was far inferior to an Azura decree. Even an Azura decree could only heavily wound famine but not kill it. Let's give it a try. This time, my attack method will be different. Lin Ming touched the Azura primal god cannon. He had no idea just how many rare treasures of the universe were incorporated into this god cannon, just how many materials were needed to forge it. In the ancient era, this god cannon had once followed the Azura Road Master into battle and had obtained many magnificent war exploits. Chapter 1914, The Strongest Joint Attack. Chapter 1914, The Strongest Joint Attack. A different attack method? When the many Empyreans heard Lin Ming's words, they were left surprised. The so-called different attack method, could it be related to the divine aura that emanated from Lin Ming just now? Lin Ming said, "I'm not sure, but I believe that no matter how powerful an existence is, they will never be invincible. Even the good fortune Saint Sovereign must have a weakness." As Lin Ming spoke, no one asked any more questions. With Empyrean Primordius on the precipice of death, there was just no time to talk. Moreover, the key factor was that the Empyreans present had faith in Lin Ming. He had already created far too many miracles. "Everyone, help me." As Lin Ming's voice fell, his blood vitality began to seethe and roil. The 9 stars of the Dao Palace completely opened and his body emitted loud crackling sounds as his figure rose and black scales appeared all over him. In order to operate the Azura primal god cannon the best he could, Lin Ming had activated the power of the Azura blood. At this time, his blood vessels and meridians began to surge like a flood. Condensed blood vitality and energy shot out from his pores, gathering in the void. Not just that, but Lin Ming's spiritual sea started to tumble and stir. Soul force roared out from him, gathering into purple pythons that rushed out from Lin Ming's soul. All of these strengths were Lin Ming's true source soul, and now he was pouring all of it into the Azura primal god cannon without reserve. Slowly, the runes atop the Azura primal god cannon began to emit a bright and eternally glorious light. Marks started to float in the air, like innumerable faint stars revolving around the cannon that made it seem even more mystical and magnificent. Just Lin Ming's strength alone was far from enough. At this time, stream after stream of great energy began to flow into Lin Ming's body. These strengths were as deep and vast as a sea, all of them pouring into Lin Ming like massive rivers and then flowing through him into the Azura primal god cannon. The source of these strengths was all the ancient race Empyreans of the Primeval universe that were trying their best to struggle for a future within the Ark of Hope. They had already helped Lin Ming activate the Azura primal god cannon once before. Now that they were coordinating with him a second time, this was already a familiar process. None of them knew what Lin Ming's plan was, nor did they know what the chances of success were. But at this time, none of them asked. They could only desperately push forwards, burning their life source without hesitation to wrestle for the slightest ray of hope. Many ancient race Empyreans began burning their fires of life. Their appearances started to wither, becoming older. They had already been powering the Ark of Hope's array formation all this time, and they had consumed a tremendous amount of energy. This strength that they poured into Lin Ming was all they had left. Some older Empyreans barely had enough strength to continue standing and almost slumped over. But even so, they continued to pour their power into the array formation. The entire Ark of Hope was silent. No one spoke. Only the sound of roiling soul force echoed in the air as all eyes were focused on Lin Ming. Lin Ming required time to gather his potential. But at this time, within the body of famine, Empyrean Primordius had already consumed a tremendous amount of strength and was finding it hard to continue. The bone armor on his body was almost corroded to nothing, and he dripped with blood all over. Famine's flesh trembled around Empyrean Primordius. The flesh became like walls, pressing down on him. This terrifying strength could even crush a planet, and now it was all being withstood by Empyrean Primordius alone. Catcher. With a loud crack, Empyrean Primordius' right bone blade finally cracked as it tried to slice through the increasingly dense flesh and corrosive strength. Whoosh! Behind Empyrean Primordius, the blood-red tentacles chased after him faster and faster. They bored tunnels through Famine's body, soon about to pierce through Empyrean Primordius. A callous smile unconsciously appeared on the good fortune Saint Sovereign's face. Although his battle with Empyrean Primordius and the ancient races had caused him to suffer heavy losses, if he could catch Empyrean Primordius and swallow his mortal body, then he could restore a bit of his lost essence energy and blood vitality, restoring himself that much faster. But just as he was about to kill Empyrean Primordius, his body shook. The smile on his face froze. Killing intent. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes widened. He swiveled to look towards the Ark of Hope. At this time, the Ark of Hope had fallen utterly silent. Its protective shield had disappeared, and now it was only relying on the tough defenses of his hull to continue onwards. This was because all the power within the Ark of Hope was gathering into the Azura primal god cannon, and it could no longer maintain its protective shield. On the bow of the Ark of Hope, the Azura primal god cannon began to shake. Rumbling filled the air like countless texts being recited in unison. In that incomparably ancient and profound cannon barrel, a terrifying strength that could crush billions of miles of space began to condense, turning into a blinding light. This light became increasingly glorious and magnificent like a supernova. But strangely, there was no sound. As if the terrifying power of the Azura primal god cannon could swallow all sound in the world. In that moment, the heavens and earth fell silent. All that existed in everyone's field of view was a vast white light that swallowed everything as it swept towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Humph! The good fortune Saint Sovereign coldly snorted. He had withstood 3 Azura decrees, beyond divinity-level treasures that represented the will of the Azura Road Master. Even then he had only suffered heavy damage. So, this Azura primal god cannon that was operated by a pack of Empyreans was nothing at all. You want to save Primordius? Dream on. The good fortune Saint Sovereign contemptuously sneered. Instead of hurting 10 fingers, he would rather break off one instead. Even if he had to be injured again, he would still kill Empyrean Primordius first to prevent all future troubles. Whoosh. Within Famine's body, the bone dragon that had transformed into a blood-red lance continued to pierce toward Primordius without slowing. Peng. Empyrean Primordius' tattered bone armor was directly pierced through. Blood shot out. Empyrean Primordius shook. He looked blankly on as a large and massive bone spear thrust through his chest, bringing with it a giant deluge of blood. But even now, within Empyrean Primordius' eyes there was no sorrow, no anger, and no regret. What he had was a firm resolution. Within his heart was a faint brilliance, one that he could sense Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's aura from. During his final twilight, that pale and light soul force continued to accompany him at his side, leaving him forever enchanted and at peace. When he broke into Famine's body, his goal was not to destroy it. He was well aware that with his own strength, it would be impossible to sever Famine's life force. The reason he desperately rushed into Famine, ignoring the corrosion of his bone armor and ignoring the terrifying pressure from the walls of flesh around him, was all in order to penetrate as deep as he could. Then, he could detonate himself from within, gather all of his life force, combust his soul, burn his energy, in his life, a move that could only be used once, the strongest and most glorious final attack. What? This attack? Seeing the Azura primal god cannons blast shoot towards him, the originally contemptuous good fortune Saint Sovereign suddenly changed his complexion. From this terrifying energy he could feel a soul-destroying aura. And, what was most terrifying was that this energy had locked onto the singular weak point within Famine's body. In other words, the spirit mark which the good fortune Saint Sovereign had left in Famine. Famine's soul had been sealed away by Empyrean divine seal. The good fortune Saint Sovereign had used the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to extract the flesh and blood essence from Famine and fuse it into his own body. This was the method he used to establish a connection with Famine. The reason he was able to control Famine's body was because he had left his own spirit mark within it. The place of this spirit mark was not too far away from the good fortune Saint Sovereign's main body. Lin Ming had poured his soul force into the magic cube, using the magic cube to search until he finally found this singular point. The all-out cannon blast was aimed towards this area. Once it was erased, the good fortune Saint Sovereign would lose control of Famine. There was nothing that was truly invincible. How is this possible? The good fortune Saint Sovereign was shocked beyond compare. Famine had such a massive body that it was impossible for it to be a coincidence for the enemy to strike solely this point. But, who was it that had discovered the location of the spirit mark? Humph. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's expression turned fierce and hideous. With several loud popping sounds, all around him dozens of red bone dragons had appeared. These red bone dragons swirled in front of the good fortune Saint Sovereign, ready to intercept the cannon blast. Famine's mortal body was extremely formidable. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was fully confident that with these dozens of red bone dragons intercepting the strike, even if the ancient races had discovered his weakness, they still couldn't do anything with it. But at this time, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion changed once more. Deep within Famine, he could feel a power brewing like a volcano. Primordius, have you gone insane? The good fortune Saint Sovereign was panic-stricken. The point that this terrifying strength was gathering towards was where Empyrean Primordius was. At this time, Empyrean Primordius' body had swelled up. His blood vitality and divine soul were being burned to the extreme. Within his pupils there was a complex interweaving of freedom and resolve. In front of him, a faint soul force condensed, manifesting into the vague phantom of Heavenly Empress Xuanqing. Heavenly Empress Xuanqing gazed at Empyrean Primordius, her eyes filled with a soft and gentle love. One was a towering abyssal demon and the other was a soul goddess with no physical body. Both of them hugged each other, and yet this didn't seem out of place at all. Rather, It seemed to be the most beautiful image in existence. Empyrean Primordius' body was completely soaked in a blinding divine light, like the last flash before a star exploded. A horrifying strength erupted. At this time, Empyrean Primordius had the strength of a true divinity, and he had the seized body of an abyssal. Once he detonated himself, the power behind the explosion could be imagined. Moreover, he was deep within famine and had aimed at the brief moment when the good fortune Saint Sovereign was at his weakest. Damn it all! The good fortune Saint Sovereign roared. But he could not stop Empyrean Primordius. Bang! A world-shaking explosion occurred, blasting through Famine's body. From the side of Famine, the terrifying explosion burst through his body and swept through space, bringing with it endless pieces of flesh and blood. The titanic energy storm that Empyrean Primordius began to tear apart everything in the void around it. Even the surrounding enchantment of supernatural power was struck by this dreadful strength, instantly blowing up into pieces. The nearby Saint Empyreans all fled. But many world kings and holy lords were sucked in, all of them dying miserable death. Empyrean Primordius' self-detonation had blown open a gaping wound in Famine. And at the same time, the Azura Primal God Cannon's energy blast also struck the good fortune Saint Sovereign. It aimed straight towards the spirit mark that the good fortune Saint Sovereign had left in Famine. Ca. A divine light melted away all. A horrifying energy beam completely swallowed the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Chapter 1915, True Divinity Mark. Chapter 1915, True Divinity Mark. Divine light cut through the cosmos. A terrifying storm of energy swallowed all, causing space to collapse in a range of 1,000,000 miles. Space storms recklessly rushed out, swallowing everything, twisting apart even planets. The massive energy vortex swallowed almost half of Famine's planet-sized body. As for the good fortune Saint Sovereign, it was like someone had thrown acid on him, making his entire body begin to rapidly melt away. The divine light swept through all, even covering light rays and sound waves. All strength was swallowed within. Several Saint Ray spirit ships were caught in this energy vortex and destroyed, immediately disintegrated. The numerous Saint Lords, Holy Lords, and even world kings on board were annihilated without even bones remaining. As for the Saint Race Empyreans, they all began to run away lest they were also affected. The entire Primeval universe seemed to have been severed in half by this divine sword, leaving a terrifying white scar through space. The middle of this white scar was an absolute death zone. Any spirit ships, world kings, or Empyreans that fell in would vanish without a trace. Who? From deep within this giant vortex a dreadful demonic roar transmitted outwards, like 10,000 god beasts howling out together. Giant sonic waves and space storms mixed into the vortex of energy, tearing apart all. This was the cry of Famine. It was clear that it was suffering agonizing pain. Do we still have energy reserves? Di Wuhen shouted out within the Ark of Hope. The battle had yet to end. Whether it was the Ark of Hope or the martial artists within it, they had all used a tremendous amount of energy and could be described as lamps that had used up all their oil. There isn't much left, Smokeless said, sweat dripping down her forehead. Because many of the Empyreans had used up their strength, Smokeless had also stepped forwards to contribute her power. And at this time, standing beside Smokeless, Lin Ming's face was pale white. Sweat streamed down his face and within his pupils the image of a grey cube flashed in and out of existence, appearing and then hiding again. But this time, no one had the energy to notice the phenomenon occurring within Lin Ming's eyes. I've used up too much energy. Lin Ming slumped onto the table before him, taking great heaving gasps of air. Just now, Lin Ming had used the Davik Idao Palace in conjunction with the Divine Soul Tool, the Magic Cube. With this, he had barely been able to locate the spirit mark point that the good fortune Saint Sovereign had placed within Famine. In the cannon blast just now, out of all the martial artists in the Ark of Hope, the one who had exhausted himself the most was undoubtedly Lin Ming. Lin Ming, are you okay? Several Empyreans asked with concern. Lin Ming dismissively waved his hand and struggled to say, "We must leave as soon as possible. The good fortune Saint Sovereign isn't dead." Lin Ming had used the magic cube to locate the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign spirit mark and was thus extremely sensitive to this spirit mark's existence. He knew that in the strike just now, he hadn't been able to erase the spirit mark. After the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign fused with Famine's body, their life force was just too terrifying. Even the Azura primal god cannon that was powered by numerous Empyreans, and then added on with the implosion of Empyrean Primordius deep within Famine, still wasn't able to defeat them. As the ancient remnant races heard Lin Ming's words, they felt as if their hearts were dropped in ice. In truth, they had already prepared themselves for failure. After all, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was too strong. But after seeing that strike just now and the incredible explosion that lit up the universe, a faint and wild hope had still existed in their hearts. However, even that faint ray of hope had disappeared, making it hard for them to accept. The Celestial Patriarch, the Old God Sovereign, Empyrean Primordius, Heavenly Empress Shenqing, peerless powerhouses had burnt their lives one after another to fight, but in the end they only managed to severely wound the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. "Not yet, it's not over yet, we're breaking out of here," Tabague shouted. He desperately poured all of his power of divinity into the Ark of Hope's Grand Array formation, and the other Empyreans followed suit. Now that they had already reached their limits, they had to overdraw their life in order to do this. And at this time, from where Famine was covered by the energy storm, a thick red dragon tentacle pierced out of that horrifying black vortex, striking towards the Ark of Hope. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had begun his attack once more. It was only that this red dragon tentacle was dripping with blood, it had clearly suffered tremendous damage. "I will kill you all." This hatred-filled curse resounded through the cosmos. Seeing the red dragon tentacle shoot towards them, the expressions of the ancient race Empyreans all changed. They knew that once they were tied down by this red dragon tentacle, they were all finished. This was because there were still many Empyreans within the Saint Army. Due to that fearful explosion just now, the Empyreans had all scattered and fled as far as they could. They were flesh and blood unlike the Ark of Hope and couldn't withstand the shockwaves from such a terrifying energy storm. But currently, the energy storm was weakening and those Empyreans that ran away were rapidly returning. If they were encircled, then the Ark of Hope would never be able to escape. "Explode for me." As everything hung by a single thread, Tabague suddenly thrust out a withered yellow god decree. The 3 Azura decrees had already been used. What Tabague held in his hand was one left behind by an upper true divinity. After being repaired by Lin Ming, the might within it had been restored to its past state. In the hands of the ancient races, it was a formidable weapon only inferior to the Azura decrees. Bang! The god decree blasted through space and a powerful shockwave blew away the dragon tentacle. At the same time, the Ark of Hope was pushed away by the impact of the shockwave and went tumbling backwards like a meteor. "Rush out." Di Wuhen had already recklessly burned his blood essence. The other Empyreans were also pouring every drop of energy they had into the Ark of Hope's array formation. Energy roiled and raged and the Ark of Hope violently trembled. It shot forwards like a beam of white light. Whoosh! An incredible impulse force erupted. After being pushed forwards by this tremendous propulsion, the Ark of Hope turned into a divine beam of light that instantly passed 1,000,000 miles through the void, shooting deep into the universe. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's force field blockade had already been broken in that explosion just now. For a time, the Ark of Hope was like a fish swimming through the sea, a bird flying through the air, an unstoppable force. In terms of speed alone, the Ark of Hope surpassed the Saint Empyreans by far. Even if it were the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign who had fused with Famine, because Famine's body was too large, it would be hard for him to pursue the Ark of Hope. Moreover, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had already sustained heavy wounds. In this battle he had experienced severe injuries. Ever since the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign became an extreme Empyrean, he had never once suffered wounds like he had today. Damn it! Space was torn apart and blood tentacles stretched out. Famine's giant body forcefully pushed out from the collapsing spatial vortex. Over half of its flesh had melted away. From afar, it resembled an apple that had many bites taken out of it, completely rotten. Blood gushed out all over Famine's body like numerous erupting volcanoes. The space around it was covered in red mist. Lin Ming, ancient remnant races, I will kill you all myself. Famine's losses were deep and the good fortune Saint Sovereign's main body was also dripping with blood. Frightening wounds were left all over him and the flesh and blood there wriggled as if vicious beasts would pop out. If he wanted to recover, he would need an extremely long period of time. Your Majesty Saint Sovereign. In front of the good fortune Saint Sovereign many Empyreans fell to their knees. These Empyreans were all filled with fear. This fight had taken a sudden unfavorable turn, and they were all more or less related to this outcome. They were scared that the good fortune Saint Sovereign would blame them all for this in a fit of anger. Just what are you dawdling here for? Chase them. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's face darkened. He never imagined that in his first battle ever since he subdued famine, facing a group of people that were in his eyes nothing more than ants, he would actually be reduced to such a state. Not only had he been severely wounded but he had allowed Lin Ming and the ancient remnant races to escape. This was a disastrous defeat. The Saint Empyreans all looked at each other in blank dismay. They had already seen the terrifying speed that the Ark of Hope had fled with after the force field blockade had been shattered. That wasn't a speed they could overtake at all. In the large universes of the 33 heavens, once they lost the Ark of Hope and wanted to chase after them, that was no different from searching for a needle in a haystack. Wasn't that easier said than done? The exception was if they were a true divinity that could search a world with their divine sense. Only then would they have a chance of catching up. But now, they didn't even know which direction to go in. Take this. The good fortune Saint Sovereign waved his arms and several crimson jade slips flew out into the hands of the peak Empyreans present. As they received these jade slips they were slightly stunned. The good fortune Saint Sovereign gloomily said, I have left behind my tracking mark on their spirit ship. If you use these jade slips you will naturally be able to find them. They are nothing but a completely exhausted group of people. Catch them and bring them back, I do not care who has to die in the process. During that final attack, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had already realized that it was unlikely for him to be able to hold the ancient races from escaping. Thus, after that attack, the good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't try too hard to hold back the Ark of Hope but had instead left behind a tracking mark on the spirit ship. Chapter 1916. The Lurking Danger. Chapter 1916. The Lurking Danger. A true divinity tracking mark was extremely difficult to erase. At the Fallen God mountain range when Lin Ming was grasping the principles atop the shrine platforms there, he had been marked by the great Brahmic God King. If it weren't for Sheng Mai arriving right on time then Lin Ming's situation would have been dire indeed. The Saint Race Empyreans took these crimson jade slips and probed them with their divine sense. They could faintly feel the direction of the Ark of Hope in their minds. It was a small yet brilliant mote of light that was speeding away at an unbelievable speed, rapidly increasing the distance from them. There it is. The Saint Race Empyreans' eyes lit up. From just this alone, they dreaded the good fortune Saint Sovereign. When the good fortune Saint Sovereign was severely wounded and his spirit mark was being attacked by the Azura primal god cannon and was nearly erased, he had still managed to return a strike and leave a tracking mark on the Ark of Hope. This level of ability was extraordinary. 90% of the Empyreans rushed away, chasing after the Ark of Hope. As for the remaining Saint Race powerhouses that were dispersed all over, they completely sealed away this part of the universe. Soon, in that battlefield that had been filled with intense and brutal fighting, there was only the good fortune Saint Sovereign left behind with the wounded body of famine. In the dark starry space, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion was dim, no one could know what he was thinking. He remained silent for a long time, quietly assessing all the wounded areas within famine's body. He frowned. He had been injured far too heavily. He would need to return to recover from this and the healing period would be extremely long. Slowly, the good fortune Saint Sovereign stretched out his right hand. In his palm a black bead slowly revolved. Numerous mystical patterns ran across the surface of this bead, beating like blood vessels. This was the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The good fortune Saint Sovereign sucked in a deep breath of air. A thick smell of blood dissipated from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, entering the Saint Sovereign and famine's body slowly. He was healing his wounds with the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead was able to absorb blood vitality and essence. After the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign obtained the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, he had spent a long period of time venturing all over to find flesh and blood essence to nourish the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Now, he released part of this flesh and blood essence in order to enhance the recovery speed of himself and Famine. Famine itself already possessed an incredible life force and a mind-boggling defensive power. Even though it had suffered strike after devastating strike, it was only injured, not yet dead. But correspondingly, once Famine was wounded, recovering from these wounds was difficult. The loss in life force was far too great. No matter what sort of heavenly materials were tossed into Famine, it was like throwing a grain of rice into a field, there just wasn't any noticeable effect. So even with the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, it would be a monumental task for the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign to completely restore Famine. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign constantly absorbed flesh and blood essence from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. This process continued for 2 hours. After that, the light from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead became increasingly dense and bright as it surrounded the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's main body. Then, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign separated himself from Famine and flew into the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. After that, the bead slowly sank into Famine's body, burying itself deep within the monster's flesh. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead sank deeper and deeper, falling inwards for over 1,000 miles until it reached the center of Famine's body, where it soaked itself in a massive pond of blood. This was the center of Famine. It was an area similar to a giant heart. Every time it beat, the sound was like colliding planets, bass enough to cause space to shake. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead was the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's secret escape route. Although he seemed like an unparalleled existence in the world, undefeatable by anyone, the truth was that there were existences within the 33 heavens that could threaten his life. For instance, the Soul Emperor. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign and the Soul Emperor had formed a devil's contract with each other. For a long period of time, neither party would aggress against the other. But the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign would never believe any contract. He hid himself in the Grand Mist Spirit Bead and used it to protect himself, only exposing Famine's body on the outside. During the healing period, he would be extremely frail and weak. If a peak powerhouse of the 33 heavens wanted to take this chance to strike out against him, they would first need to break open Famine's body and obtain the Grand Mist Spirit Bead in order to find the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's true body. If this were to occur, then the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign could detonate all the life force energy within Famine's body. The might from such an action could be imagined. If this were to happen, even a true divinity would instantly perish. Rumble, rumble, rumble. After the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign sank into Famine's body, a massive black vortex appeared beneath it. Then, Famine's massive body slowly fell into this vortex, sinking into the dark chaos before it vanished from sight. Following that, space restored itself and Famine completely disappeared. Spatial ripples spread out before calming down, as if nothing had happened here. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had taken Famine and vanished together. Meanwhile, deep in space, a white spirit ship was rapidly racing along. The Ark of Hope had escaped into the vastness of space and had activated the Great Void Shift. Every use of the Great Void Shift crossed 1 billion miles, spanning innumerable celestial bodies as it raced through the universe. Within the Ark of Hope, Di Wuhen and Tabague had assumed command. They had taken over the position of the old God Sovereign and were managing the escape. Now, the two of them had become the pillars of everyone's minds and hearts. In that previous great battle, they had lost the leaders of their two greatest ancient races. Not just that, but numerous respected elders and legendary figures had sacrificed themselves for the common good. Even so, none of them had time to mope over the past. They were still being hunted and the dangers had yet to end. The spirit ship's atmosphere was tense and solemn. For all these years the martial artists of the ancient remnant races had gone on war campaigns without end and were used to their friends and companions dying. Martial artists may stand arrogantly above all of existence, wielding everything in the universe and defying the will of the heavens, but the truth was that once they died they often didn't even have bones left over. There would be nothing left of them but ash and smoke that faded away in the world. Everyone, Take this chance to restore your wounds as much as possible, Di Wuhen loudly proclaimed. Once the Ark of Hope was able to fly away at full speed, the amount of energy it used would be far less. Now, there was less than 10% remaining in the Ark of Hope's energy reserves. While it wasn't enough to operate the protective shield, it was sufficient to fly to the divine realm. The Empyreans all swallowed down pills and sat in meditation. But at this time, Lin Ming's expression was still stern. He thought for a moment and then said, "Everyone, I have a foreboding feeling." Millimeter. Many people looked towards In Ming. These casual words had no reasoning behind them, but was only a simple foreboding feeling that many people felt all the time. It normally shouldn't have been enough to arouse anyone's interest, but since the one speaking was Lin Ming, that was a completely different scenario. "What is it?" Smokeless stopped her meditation and looked to Lin Ming. She had consumed far too much strength and her face was paper white, making one feel pity for her. "I can't say for certain, but I feel that no matter how many times we activated Great Void Shifts, we still never left the perception range of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign." Lin Ming's words caused the martial artists present to be stunned. They all glanced at each, looks of fear and unease on their faces. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was far too terrifying an existence, one that they found hard to summon the courage to fight against. If it was true that they still hadn't escaped the scope of his detection, how could they not be scared? "Why do you have this feeling?" A true divinity's divine sense can search a universe, but the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign has been severely injured, so he shouldn't have this ability. Tubague's complexion was ugly. Someone like the great Brahmic god king could use his great supernatural power to search the world, but doing so required an incredible amount of energy. For the current Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, doing this would be difficult to accomplish. Lin Ming continued, "When I used the Azura Primal God Cannon to strike at the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's spirit mark, I became familiar with his soul force." What he said was a half-truth. When Lin Ming had opened the Davik Idao Palace to use the magic cube to capture the location of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's spirit mark in famine, he had been able to feel the unique soul signature of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. So, even if the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's divine sense was mixed into many others, Lin Ming could still pick it out. Now, he felt a strange mental strength linger around them. It was extremely weak, but hadn't left. If it wasn't for the magic cube and Davik Idao Palace, Lin Ming would never have sensed this. "Is that so?" Di Wuhen took a deep breath. He could feel the situation devolving further and further. If we must go to the divine realm, then we must pass through one of the saints' heavens. If we really have been locked on by the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, then our journey will be bitter indeed. If they followed the original plan, then the ancient remnant races would use the Azura decree obtained from the Azura Forbidden Land to cross the God-lamenting wall and directly enter the divine realm. Such a journey was short, but unfortunately, although this special Azura decree could pierce through the God-lamenting wall, it still required a peak Empyrean to consume an enormous amount of energy to activate. The many peak Empyreans on the Ark of Hope had already pushed themselves to the point of exhaustion. If they didn't rest to restore their strength, it would be impossible for them to activate the Azura decree. So, they could only take the risks and pass through one of the saints' heavens. Chapter 1917, Return, A. Chapter 1917, Return, A. The Primeval universe was one of the 33 heavens. It was an incomparably vast space, but the Ark of Hope only used several days to quickly reach its end. As long as they could pass through the God-lamenting wall here, the other side would be one of the saints' universes. Currently, the ancient remnant races were racing against death. This was because even if the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had managed to lock onto their position, it would still take time to pass on the information. As long as the ancient remnant races could arrive at the divine realm before the armies of the saints intercepted them, then it would be their victory. "Break through," Di Wuhen ordered without hesitation. Within the void, the Ark of Hope accelerated without end, turning into a beam of divine light that crossed millions of miles instantly, directly impacting into the God-lamenting wall. Because of the great calamity from 3.6 billion years ago, the God-lamenting wall separating the Primeval universe and the Saints' universe had become extremely weak, nearly disappearing. If a peak Empyrean were to strike it, piercing a hole through the God-lamenting wall wouldn't be difficult at all. And the Ark of Hope's full-speed impact was even beyond the all-out strike of a peak Empyrean. Whoosh! The Ark of Hope collided with the God of Lamenting. It was like an arrow shooting into an elastic curtain. The God-lamenting wall stretched forwards, forming a massive cone on the other side. The Ark of Hope quickly slowed down. The God-lamenting wall violently shook. Finally, the wall tore open and the Ark of Hope succeeded in passing into the Saints' universe from the Primeval universe. The moment that they passed through the God-lamenting wall, the ancient race powerhouses all felt their hearts gripped and went on full alert. They were afraid that behind the God-lamenting wall, all that awaited them was the trap of the Saint race. But at this time, in this unknown Saint race universe, all that existed was quiet space. Stars shined in the far-off distance without the shadow of anyone present. Everything was peaceful to the point of being eerie. A restless feeling swelled within Di Wuhen's heart. But now was not the time to hesitate. He loudly proclaimed, full speed ahead. The primal god race was currently a worn-out force filled with nothing but tired soldiers. But the Ark of Hope didn't slow down in the least. It passed through space, rapidly activating the Great Void Shift. Time and time again, the Ark of Hope crossed through this Saint race universe. The ancient races had a magnificent and gloriously long history. They possessed a star chart of the 33 heavens, a grand map that broadly described the universes of the 33 heavens. It also marked where the universes of the 33 heavens connected with each other and the main races that dwelled within them. Although this star chart's information was vague, it had an inestimable function for this moment. It could show them the general direction to take, otherwise the ancient races wouldn't know just where to go to find the divine realm. Tabague looked at the star chart and said, "The universe we're at is called Saint Strife Heaven. Its size is 70% that of the Primeval universe, and within the Saint's 7 heavens, it is one with a relatively low number of masters and is comparatively lacking in resources. According to what we know, this Saint Strife Heaven is one of the safer heavens and there are no true divinities here. There is a chance we can simply pass directly through and safely arrive at the divine realm. Even for a true divinity, wanting to travel through the universe to catch up would require time. Even if the good fortune Saint Sovereign wanted to send out news of their arrival, it would still require time. Their successful escape wasn't a hopeless prospect by any means. Moreover, according to information obtained by the primal god race, the true divinities of the saint race were in a heated struggle against each other. This was because the situation involved ownership of all the resources within the Primeval realm ruins. Amongst the saint race true divinities, the good fortune Saint Sovereign was the strongest. He had established the largest influence of the saint race and became the Saint Sovereign of the saint race, commanding all 7 heavens of the saints. He wrested away almost 80% of the saint race's total resources, including the Primeval realm ruins and the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Finally, he even managed to subdue Famine's body, making that soulless body into his avatar. All advantages were taken by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. In this situation, the other true divinities were certainly discontent. The good fortune Saint Sovereign had launched a great war focused on the primal god race. This war was to plunder the resources of the Primeval ruins, and most of these resources would be taken by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. As for the war against the divine realm, this was also because of the good fortune Saint Sovereign's ambitions. The other saint race true divinities weren't necessarily willing to serve as the good fortune Saint Sovereign's spear. Amongst all the bad news, this was the only piece of good news. As they continued passing through space, Di Wuhen looked at the star chart, beads of sweat seeping out of his forehead. 3 more great void shifts and we should arrive at the God-lamenting wall beside the divine realm. There we will be able to pass through the God-lamenting wall and enter the divine realm, Di Wuhen said. But as he spoke his complexion suddenly changed. In that moment he could feel the Ark of Hope suddenly slow down as if it had fallen into a swamp. What's happening? Tabague's complexion also changed. He could feel that the Ark of Hope had entered a giant force field. The surrounding space was sealed. Bang! The grand hall housing the Ark of Hope's array formation suddenly shook like an earthquake passed through it. The martial artists managing the array formation were shaken off their positions. Everyone was left panic-stricken. They looked out the porthole to see dozens of spirit ships before them. They had already been waiting there and had activated their array formations. The Ark of Hope was a little fly that had landed on a spider's web, unable to move. And to create an array formation that could intercept the Ark of Hope, the strength of their opponents could be imagined. Saint Race spirit ship. Di Wuhen sucked in a breath of cold air. They had been ambushed. How could they be so quick? A roaring bone race Empyrean clenched his fists, his voice filled with unwillingness. They were already so close to the divine realm, just a little bit more and they would have been able to flee the saint strife heaven. But now, all of their plans had fallen short. From the time that we escaped until now, only several days have passed. During the days we spent traveling through 2 universes of the 33 heavens, we did so entirely within the Ark of Hope, it would be impossible for anyone to be faster than us. And logically speaking, even if our location was traced, there shouldn't have been anyone here who could have caught up and still had enough time to lay down these array formations. These people should have been transferred here from the divine realm. In a quiet corner, Lin Ming suddenly spoke up. Although his voice was calm and composed, his words couldn't hide their tinge of weakness. In that battle against the good fortune Saint Sovereign, Lin Ming had used up far too much energy. He had almost combusted his soul and had been forced to overdraw his mind and soul force. Transferred from the divine realm, Tabague muttered out loud. Lin Ming's explanation was the most reasonable possibility. The saint races controlled 7 heavens, but in the end they still relied on Empyrean-level spirit ships to travel. If they wanted to cross through a universe of the 33 heavens, it would still require 1 or 2 months. In a short several days, wanting to summon so many martial artists to this area of a universe was easier said than done, much less not all Empyreans were commanded by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. However, if the martial artists that were sent to the divine realm were ordered to return and intercept the Ark of Hope, then that would be far easier. Ancient remnant races, I've been waiting for you for far too long. In the void, a loud and grand voice echoed outwards. A red-robed middle-aged man slowly flew out from the middle of the saint race forces. A faint smile hung on his face and he wore battle armor over his robes. His cultivation was at the peak Empyrean realm. His eyes were like lightning. He casually swept over the Ark of Hope's array formation and could see that its energy reserves were now down to 5%. Although this was still a beyond divinity-level spirit treasure, it was impossible for its true potential to be displayed. The background of these ancient remnant races is indeed deep. To think they could get their hands on such a supreme treasure. What a pity for them, but all of this will belong to the saints. The armored man diabolically grinned. Killing the ancient races and capturing Lin Ming alive, this would be a monumental merit. His fame and prestige amongst the saints would skyrocket and he would also obtain rich rewards from the good fortune Saint Sovereign. At this time, behind the middle-aged man, space began to distort with ripples. One after another, saint race Empyreans appeared, their figures slowly appearing as they broke through space. Their cultivations were amazing and their blood vitality was overwhelming. As they stood in space, they were like planets blocking the world. Among them there were several individuals that emanated an aura as deep as an abyss, as if they were unfathomable beings. These were also peak Empyreans, not much worse than the armored Empyrean who first appeared. The ancient race powerhouses within the Ark of Hope all had grim expressions. They could feel a great crisis and pressure pushing down on them. They had fled the tiger's den just to enter the wolf's lair. And it just so happened that they had used up nearly all of their strength in order to escape the Primeval universe. Moreover, they only had 2 peak Empyreans left in Tabague and Di Wuhen. What capital did they have to fight with these Saint Empyreans in front of them? Must the heavens destroy my people? Di Wuhen clenched his fists so hard that his hands shivered. The old god sovereign had sacrificed himself, handing the future of their people to him. But, in the end, this was all that resulted. Damn! Di Wuhen's nails dug so deep into his palms that blood began dripping. At this time, the ancient race Empyreans began moving forwards, standing behind Di Wuhen. They faced the porthole and saw this force of Saint Empyreans that was 10 times stronger and had been biding their time here. For a time, a tragic desolateness spread in their hearts. They were well aware that in this following battle, it was likely they would all be annihilated. Chapter 1918, Return, B. Chapter 1918, Return, B. Seal the array and block them in, don't give them a single crevice to escape from. In space, dozens of Saint Empyreans assembled together. In addition, there were many ordinary world kings and great world kings. These world kings and even more holy lords gathered on spirit ships that were able to combine all of their strength. They brought their energies together to reinforce the massive array net, sealing off all directions of escape for the Ark of Hope. With its nearly depleted energy reserves, the Ark of Hope simply didn't have any chances of breaking through. In the Ark of Hope, all of the ancient race Empyreans were solemn and quiet. In the face of death, no one felt fear. Instead, they silently waited for the final great battle. The Azura primal god cannon, can we still use it? Di Wuhen looked at Lin Ming. As he saw Lin Ming's pale face, Di Wuhen couldn't bear to say these words. He knew that Lin Ming had consumed far too much strength. Lin Ming fell deep in thought. To open the Azura primal god cannon with the ancient race Empyreans in their current conditions as well as using the remaining energy reserves of the Ark of Hope, he feared that even if he recklessly burned his soul he still wouldn't be able to activate it. Even if they somehow managed to operate the god cannon, the blast would only be able to kill several Saint race Empyreans, it wouldn't be able to change the momentum of the battle. They had been forced into a dead end. Looking out of the porthole, every inch of Lin Ming's flesh and blood and bones shivered in pain, on the verge of collapse. In the Primeval universe, he had banded together with the numerous ancient race powerhouses, undergoing many hardships together. They had sacrificed themselves in order to heavily wound the good fortune Saint Sovereign and find a chance of salvation somewhere in the dark. Yet, was everything going to end here? Just a single step away. If they could return to the divine realm they would be able to find humanity, find life. I understand. Di Wuhen grimly nodded. If that's the case, there's nothing else to say. Perhaps we cannot protect the bloodlines of the ancient remnant races, but at the least we can protect our glory. Perhaps we cannot change the flow of history, but at the least we will use our blood to carve our names in the river of history. As Di Wuhen spoke, a blazing fighting spirit lit up in the hearts of the ancient race martial artists. Us ancient race martial artists, since when did we fear death? I would rather die with honor than live on dishonorably. The ancient race martial artists all strengthened their resolves. And at this time, outside of the Ark of Hope the Saint Race army also began to move. Everyone, this battle is of the utmost importance. Even if success is assured, we cannot underestimate them. Attack together and make sure not a single one of them escapes. The one speaking was a Saint Empyrean wearing a gold crown. His expression was cold and ruthless, his eyes shining with killing intent. Activate the Grand Array and destroy that spirit ship's protective shield. The red-robed Saint Empyrean waved his hand. He was the High Commander of the Saint Race army assigned to invade the Divine Realm. The military seal was in his possession and his title was the Saint General, given supreme authority over this army. He had long received a warning from the good fortune Saint Sovereign. This pack of powerhouses that had fled the Primeval universe didn't have much strength left, they would collapse at the first blow. Their only hope was that mysterious spirit ship. But at this moment the spirit ship's protective shield was nearly non-existent. It wouldn't be able to last much longer. As the red-robed Saint Empyrean's voice fell, several peak Empyreans suddenly took the initiative, their bodies becoming dim. Divine lights from all sorts of astral essence surged within the void, rapidly expanding into a sea of gold. In an instant, all of the heaven and earth origin energy in the surrounding space for millions of miles was swallowed up. The Saint Race Empyreans' attacks were as dazzling as stars. Countless star-like runes came smashing downwards, colliding with the Ark of Hope. In that heaven-shaking explosion, the Ark of Hope was like a tiny boat in a raging storm, sent tumbling around in the wave. Within the Ark of Hope, the collision from the energy palm strikes of the Saint Empyreans caused everyone within to stumble about. Several exhausted Empyreans nearly toppled over. Lin Ming violently shook, only managing to stabilize himself after some time. The several Empyreans driving the Ark of Hope were deathly pale. They were all anxious as they stared at the protective shield outside the spirit ship. That strike just now was the joint attack of dozens of Empyreans, and the power behind it approached that of a true divinity. The Ark of Hope's protective shield wouldn't be able to withstand several more strikes. After their protective shield shattered, they would have to engage the Saint Race Empyreans in a battle to the death. If we have any remaining God decrees, then use them all, Di Wuhen decisively said as he looked towards the starry space outside. The ancient race's Azura decrees and upper true divinity God decrees had all been used up. All that remained were relatively ordinary God decrees. Although they were weaker, they were now the last attack methods the ancient races had. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the void, the gold-crowned Saint Empyrean flourished his hands. A wave of attacks roiled towards the Ark of Hope, smashing into it. And beside him, the Saint General moved his hands in a circle, gathering an incredibly vast amount of strength. Large arcs of electricity appeared like thunder dragons. It was clear that out of all the Saint Empyreans present, these two were the strongest. Beneath the terrifying barrage of attacks from these two people, the Ark of Hope's energy reserves began to run dry. Further out in space, numerous Saint Empyreans coldly sneered, their contemptuous eyes locked onto the Ark of Hope. The moment that the Ark of Hope's protective shield shattered, they could directly break into the spirit ship and slaughter the ancient race martial artists within. But at this time, a strange humming sound rang through the air. An overwhelming light flowed through space like a river of mercury, covering the space before them. This light contained an incredibly spiritual divine aura. It shook the void, causing the heart to shake. As it appeared, massive tracts of space were directly pierced through. It hurtled forwards like a tsunami, annihilating everything in its path. Millimeter. Feeling this heart-racing divine aura, the red-robed Empyrean and the gold-crown Empyrean both rapidly drew back. But there was still a Saint Empyrean that couldn't dodge in time and was engulfed by this golden light. Nayo. The gold-crown Empyrean shouted out. The Empyrean who was swallowed by that light was his friend. But now that he wasn't able to escape in time, his body had disintegrated away without even his bones remaining. Damn it. The gold crown Empyrean's eyes lit up with a fierce murderous intent. God decree. These Empyreans had already obtained information about the ancient remnant races. They knew that the God decrees were left behind by true divinities of the past, and their might was immeasurable. Even an Empyrean wouldn't be able to withstand them. Humph, spread out. I want to see just how many God decrees you have. The red-robed saint narrowed his eyes as he issued this order. In any case, these refugees from the Primeval universe were already caged into the inescapable array formation net. No matter what they tried, they wouldn't be able to escape. And since those within the Ark of Hope still had God decrees, it would be safer to just be a bit more careful and slowly consume them. At this time, the atmosphere within the Ark of Hope was dignified. The remaining God decrees were relatively weak and there were currently only 4 remaining. That single strike just now used up 2 other God decrees, and yet they only managed to kill a middle Empyrean. There just wasn't any meaning to that. And if the Saint Army were to scatter, then the effects of the God decrees would diminish even more. Using them again would be a waste. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Outside the spirit ship, the terrifying barrage rung against their protective shield like the merciless knell of a death god. Many array formation runes had collapsed and broken apart beneath the waves of impact. The ancient race Empyreans could already hear the sound of the protective shield breaking apart. Their hearts tightened. This was because they knew that the time to rush outside and kill until they themselves were killed was finally about to arrive. Di Wuhen and Tabague each grasped 2 of the remaining 4 God decrees. They locked onto a target, the red-robed Empyrean, the Saint General. They knew that in this situation, death was already certain. But what they wanted to do in the final moments before their deaths was to burn away their lives and detonate the God decrees, dragging this red-robed Saint General down to hell with them. If they could kill the red-robed Saint General, then that would also be an attack on the Saints. Bang! In the ongoing explosions, Di Wuhen could hear the sound of the protective barrier breaking apart. He took a deep breath and tightly gripped his weapon. He was ready to hurtle into space and burn away every ounce of his life. But at this moment, behind Di Wuhen, Lin Ming suddenly felt his mind shake. He looked outside the porthole with disbelief in his eyes. Wait, wait! Lin Ming suddenly shouted. Many ancient race Empyreans were startled. They didn't know just what Lin Ming had discovered. What is it? Di Wuhen and Tabague followed Lin Ming's gaze. But outside the porthole all they could see was the vast deepness of space and nothing else. They were puzzled. They were all looking at the same area, but did Lin Ming see some favorable turn for them? Someone is coming. Lin Ming's complexion changed again and again, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. His senses could not compare with Di Wuhen's or Tabague's, but in that moment he had heard a voice that no one else could. This voice had come from Xian Moxian and the 1,000-mile heart link. Xiao Moxian had come. Not just that, but there was also the martial artists of humanity. However, just how had they chosen this time to arrive? Chapter 1919, Reunion. Chapter 1919, Reunion. Bang! After being struck by the joint attack of the Saint Empyreans, the Ark of Hope was sent tumbling away. The protective shield covering the ship had been cracked open like an eggshell, with alarming fissures in the runes. Some of the energy from the Saint Empyreans' attacks was already able to pierce through the protective shield and crash into the Ark of Hope. Lin Ming, who did you say is coming? Di Wuhen grabbed Lin Ming's shoulder. In such a critical situation, he didn't know whether the people Lin Ming spoke of were friends or enemies. The Divine Realm, human martial artist. Lin Ming said. At this time, within his mind, the 1,000-mile heartlink was still reverberating with Xiao Moxian's worried voice. Divine Realm, humans. The ancient race powerhouses were stunned upon hearing this. The Divine Realm was separated from the Primeval universe by another heaven. Even if the Great Calamity descended and the God-lamenting wall became extremely weak, it would be difficult for their races to meet. Even so, the two races had just the tiniest connection between them. Empyrean Primordius was a human and Heavenly Empress Shenqing had died in the Divine Realm. Humanity was once a peak race of the 33 heavens, but after the Great Calamity 3.6 billion years ago their inheritances had been severed and their true divinities had died out. Even most of their Empyreans perished in the conflict and they had become a waning race. Just what would humanity of the present era be like? As the ancient race martial artists were stunned, there was a loud detonation as the Ark of Hope's protective shield finally shattered into pieces. In the midst of the terrifying attack, a beam of energy shot out, causing brilliant fireworks to light up the dark space. It's finally broken, heh. The gold-crowned Empyrean and the Saint General both chuckled. They used their techniques, about to fatally strike down the many martial artists within the Ark of Hope. But at this time, Di Wuhen threw out 2 God decrees without a hint of hesitation. Whoosh! The God decrees cut through space like a divine arrow, exploding in the cosmos. They formed a dreadful shockwave that swept over 1,000,000 miles of space. The Gold Crown Empyrean savagely grinned. Using the same old tricks to delay for time, but you still won't be able to change your fate of annihilation. The Gold Crown Empyrean avoided the God decree's energy storm and was about to attack once more. But at this time his complexion changed. He turned to see that behind him, just 10,000 miles away, ripple-like distortions began to appear in the pitch-black space. Within these ripples an exquisite white building slowly surfaced. This was a palace. This white jade palace seemed insignificant compared to the massive spatial ripples around it, like a leaf of jade floating in the water. But as the Gold Crown Empyrean looked at this white jade palace, he felt something bizarre and weird. Looking at this palace, he felt as if all of existence were unreal and this palace was slowly fluttering towards him from some distant dream. And following that, right behind this palace, spirit ships began to rush out en masse. These spirit ships were all massive constructions, each one emitting a vast and solemn atmosphere, and amidst these spirit ships there was a golden great Buddha. This golden great Buddha sat upon a lotus throne, its body 1,000 miles long, stabilizing the surrounding void. Rays of Buddhic light lingered around it, giving it a solemn and hallowed atmosphere. Buddhist chants hummed in the air, ignoring distances of space to resound in the ears of all like a great bell enlightening the mind, so loud that even the deaf could hear it. Like this, the great Buddha flew forwards in space like a giant sun, dazzling to the eyes. Humanity. The High Commander of the Saint Race's Divine Realm Invasion Force, the red-robed Saint General, narrowed his eye as he saw those spirit ships. After preparing for war in the Divine Realm for so many years, he certainly recognized the influences of humanity. The White Jade Palace originated from Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. As for the Golden Great Buddha, it was from the most glorious and storied human Empyrean Holy Land, Mount Potala. This was Mount Potala's supreme treasure for crossing through space. Humanity, these are human martial artists. Diwuhen, Tabaguay, and the many other ancient race Empyreans had looks of surprise and disbelief twining together on their faces as they saw the forces of humanity arrive. They had heard that humanity had long been on the decline. In the minds of the primal god race, the entire divine realm might be far more populous than the Primeval universe, but the number of genuine masters probably wasn't much higher. Thus, as they saw this sight before them today, all of them were filled with incredulity. Whether it was that White Jade Palace or that Golden Great Buddha, both gave off immeasurably deep feelings. From a misty sea of white light around the White Jade Palace, a white-clothed woman stepped forth from the void. Millions of hazy white silk ribbons hung from her body, enveloping her in a faint fog. She was a genius of peerless talent and grace. Looking at her was like looking at a goddess from a dream. Even though it was difficult to see her appearance, she actually gave off an inexplicable feeling, as if there was always a small voice in one's head informing a person that she was beautiful to the extreme. Her steps were calm and measured. She held a ribbon in her hand, as if she weren't here to slaughter her enemies but simply taking a leisurely walk through the park, enjoying the sights. Meanwhile, in the two eyes of the great golden Buddha, there were two men in cassias respectively sitting in the right eye and left eye. The one in the right eye was an enlightened old monk. He held a monk's staff, a kakara, in his hands, set horizontally above his lap. His eyes were closed as sutras were prayed from between his lips. And in the left eye was a young monk. His face was sharp and polished. He was an incredibly handsome individual and he wore a crown atop his head. His eyes were as bright as the moon and his lips were red like cinnabar. This young man wearing the cassia was one of humanity's most talented Empyreans, Emperor Sokya, and behind the great golden Buddha was a magnificently built bright red divine warship. Atop the bow of this warship, a tall old man wielding a great sword arrogantly stood there. He wore red robes and his aura was aggressive and unfathomably deep. In the negotiations between the saints and humanity, Lin Ming had once casually acquainted himself with this red-robed old man. He was a peak human Empyrean, Skyrend Godlord. The four human Empyreans lined up, creating an array in the void. They formed a wall of energy that emitted a dreadful pressure, shocking the cosmos. Even though both sides possessed peak Empyreans, the momentum of the saints was actually suppressed. In particular, Divine Dream and Emperor Sokya. One yin, one yang, the two of them together nearly reached the realm of true divinity. Empyrean Divine Dream, Senior Emperor Sokya, Great Limitless Buddha, Skyrend Godlord. As Lin Ming saw these four people he was ecstatic. He had left the divine realm for dozens of years and had experienced hurdles and dangers, disregarding his own safety, risking his life and suffering countless hardships all the while. He had already felt constrained for a long time. Now, when he was alone and without help, he saw the Empyreans of humanity arrive just in time. They are humanity's Empyreans? Diwuhen was shocked as he saw these people, especially Divine Dream and Emperor Sokya. In this great calamity the saints' momentum had been overwhelming and unstoppable as they went to war in all directions, forcing other races to retreat again and again in defeat. Some held the belief that the ancient remnant races were in the twilight of their years, soon to perish, and humanity's destiny had already been exhausted. Although Diwuhen and Tabaguay didn't wish to acknowledge this, they also faintly had this idea in their hearts. But as they saw the sight before them, they actually discovered that humanity possessed mind-boggling peerless geniuses. For contrast, even if the number one genius of the ancient remnant races, Smokeless, were to grow up, even she wouldn't compare to Divine Dream and Empress Okia. Big Brother Lin. Lin Ming felt his breath leave him the moment he heard this familiar voice. He followed it to see that not too far behind Empyrean Divine Dream there was a young woman dressed in black. She was slim and elegant with skin as bright as porcelain. Her body was covered in a faint black fog, and in the space around her, heaven and earth origin energy and starlight gathered, lingering about her. The black-clothed woman's belly was slightly raised. Exuding from it was a potent yet small life force. Even from such a distance, Lin Ming could feel that he shared the same roots as this life force. This black-clothed woman was Xiao Moxian. Currently she was looking towards the Ark of Hope with worry on her face. As for Lin Ming's flesh and blood growing within her stomach, it had already been gestating for a long time. This was because for those of a god-beast bloodline, breeding a small life required a tremendously long period of time. But, once the child was born, it would have a naturally gifted spiritual wisdom. Lin Ming's gaze pierced through the Ark of Hope's porthole and looked right to Xiao Moxian. Xiao Moxian couldn't see Lin Ming, but she could clearly feel his existence. For a time, all sorts of feelings swelled up within his heart. He felt that he owed Xiao Moxian far too much. During this time Lin Ming was unable to show himself as they were surrounded by the saints. Xiana, how did you know we were in a crisis? In the Ark of Hope, Lin Ming used the 1,000-mile heart link to speak to Xiao Moxian. A woman told us. She wore a black dress and was as ephemeral as fog. She showed us images of you struggling in the Primeval universe. Although Empyrean Divine Dream was suspicious, she still quickly gathered the human elites to race here. Luckily we managed to catch up in time. As Xian Moxian happily spoke, Lin Ming was stunned. A black-dressed woman as ephemeral as fog, could it be Soul Empress Sheng Mai? Only she would know that he was bitterly engaged with the saints. Sheng Mai, she saved us? Lin Ming didn't know what to feel. There were too many riddles concerning Sheng Mai. Lin Ming looked towards Empyrean Divine Dream once more. He knew that for Divine Dream to act according to such uncertain news and gather the elites of humanity to rush here was actually an incredibly great risk. If this was a trap, then there was a chance they could all be annihilated. Even so, Empyrean Divine Dream had relied on her own instinct and judgment to make such a bold and decisive decision. And the reason she took such a risk was mostly to rescue Lin Ming. Thinking of this, Lin Ming felt inexplicably moved. Empyrean Primordius, Heavenly Empress Shenqing, the Old God Sovereign, Divine Dream, even Empyrean Divine Seal from 3.6 billion years in the past, as well as the warriors of humanity and the ancient remnant races, all of these people were fighting beside him. He was not alone. In the void, the red-robed Saint General stepped forwards. He looked at Empyrean Divine Dream and sneered, "Divine Dream, hey, to think you would cross the God-lamenting wall to challenge us. Are you planning to officially declare war with my saint race?" Although the red-robed Saint General was the supreme commander of the saint race's divine realm invasion force, the truth was that they had never actually truly struck at the divine realm. Almost 100 years ago, the saints sent the good fortune Saint Sun to Mount Potala. There, the many Empyreans established a contract stating that the battlefield would be limited to the bright luster world, and those at the Empyrean level wouldn't directly participate in the battles. Humanity and the saints had existed in precarious peace. But today, this temporary and false peace would be broken. Let the curtains of the true war rise today. Chapter 1920, The Might of Divine Dream. Chapter 1920, The Might of Divine Dream. Ha ha ha. Before Empyrean Divine Dream spoke, Skyrend Godlord was already wildly cackling. Do you really think we're cattle to be butchered by you? Do you think I wouldn't kill off you saint dogs and wait for the pack of you to bite us instead? Today, none of you are leaving here. Skyrend Godlord was already enraged. For all these years he had been holding in his anger, his vexation growing more and more. The red-robed Saint General had caused innumerable troubles for him, constantly taunting him with the prospect of an all-out war, so how could he not be angry about this? You don't think any of us are leaving? You sure like to shamelessly boast. The several peak Empyreans of the Saint Army began to laugh. Since you all want to die a bit earlier, then let me fulfill your wish. I've always wanted to experience your strength, in particular you, divine dream. I heard that you are a peerless talent of your era and are considered the spiritual leader of humanity. Then, let me see just what capital you have today. The red-robed Saint General licked his lips, his eyes filled with a plundering aggression as if he could pierce through the dense fog surrounding Divine Dream and see her appearance. Facing such rude behavior, Empyrean Divine Dream simply stretched out her right hand. On the ends of her fingertips, tiny ice crystals seemed to gather, forming an ice lotus that quietly bloomed. As this ice lotus appeared, a hazy and mystical atmosphere followed it, as if there was some vague sound from the heavens reverberating through the world. From a single node, in an instant it swept through the world. Space dimmed, becoming mystical. Hallucinogenic lights filled the world. A rainbow of light ripples spread out, dazzling the senses. Divine dream space. This whole space extended to infinity, seeming to contain some horrifying depth in its magnificence. The red-robed Saint General frowned. He was directly enveloped in this space. He was impressed. He was well aware that this woman across from him was considered the person closest to true divinity within the human race. If it wasn't for the inheritance of the divine realm true divinities being severed long ago, if it wasn't for the fact that she chose to take the extinct path of dual cultivating energy and divine, if she hadn't needed to rely on herself for all this time, then she might have already become a true divinity. The red-robed Saint General gripped his fists, explosive sounds echoing out from his joints. With loud crackles, his body grew larger and taller. Golden beams of light shot out from his pupils and he emitted waves of mystical strength. This was the Saint race's bloodline body metamorphosis. The red-robed Saint General didn't underestimate his opponent. From the start he gave it everything he had. With his bloodline, after using body metamorphosis, his golden eyes would be able to penetrate through all illusions. It was a top technique of the Saint race. In the middle of the divine dream space, countless celestial bodies floated about. Innumerable divine mountains hovered in space. In the midst of that endless fog, every mountain had a ghost of divine dream sitting in meditation atop it. Every ghost emitted a vast pressure, the eyes like stars that aimed towards the red-robed Saint General. Every ray of light transformed into god-beasts in space. They were covered with scales, possessing an ancient and distant will as they roared out loud, sweeping towards the red-robed Saint General. These god-beasts and all other illusions were formed from the dream, but they were incredibly lifelike. They truly possessed the power of Empyreans and the strength of god-beasts. Reality was a dream, dream was a reality. Within the divine dream space force field, everything Empyrean divine dream thought of could turn into reality. On the side of the humans, all martial artists watched with wide eyes. This was the first time they had seen Empyrean divine dream fight. The god race had long heard of divine dream's fame, but as to just how strong she was, they didn't know. Today, they would finally see it. An illusion attack. The Saint General coldly sneered. His golden eyes burst out with a golden light that could pierce through all. 1,000,000,000,000 golden symbols smashed into the surrounding world, but in the blink of an eye they were all crushed by the infinite mystical strength surrounding everything. His golden pupils that could see through all of existence actually couldn't see through anything in this world. His vision was completely sucked in by divine dreams incarnations and those god-beast illusions. In an instant, the red-robed Saint General's complexion greatly changed. How is this possible? Could this space be the real world and not an illusion? The red-robed Saint General felt goosebumps rise all over his body. To transform the real world with but a thought, was that even possible? Bang! A dragon-shaped god-beast swept towards the red-robed Saint General. The sharp claws only gently grasped outwards to easily tear open the void, creating a whirlwind of death. The red-robed Saint General tossed his head back and roared out loud. His fist was as hard as a star, possessing the momentum to crush apart planets. In a single breath he punched out countless fist phantoms, slaughtering the god-beasts around him. Every fist strike caused a god-beast to suffer heavy wounds, or even be crushed. These god-beasts were overall slightly weaker than a lower Empyrean, but their bodies were actually incredibly tough. As every god-beast broke apart, The red-robed Saint General was also struck in return, causing his blood to tumble. Moreover, he soon realized that the shattered god beasts were actually rapidly reforming, a continuous stream with no end. The red-robed Saint General was consuming a considerable amount of strength. As for Empyrean Divine Dream, she was at the center of the divine dream space and hadn't even moved her fingers. Her eyes were slightly closed. A dim white holy light covered her, like falling snow. Her posture was as if she were leisurely standing around. Empyrean Divine Dream seemed as if she hadn't used any strength at all. In fact, it looked as if this battle was not involved with her in any way, as if she had never attacked to begin with. This is her world, her battlefield. If I can't break apart this world, then her strength will be endless. I will suffer certain defeat. The red-robed Saint General's heart shook, immediately believing he understood the basic mysteries behind this world. To turn the dreamland into reality, this was the so-called divine dream space, divine dream's unique ability. As long as they were within the divine dream space, then divine dream stood in an invincible position. Your thoughts aren't wrong, Empyrean Divine Dream suddenly said. With a single glance she had been able to see through the red-robed Saint General's heart. Her awe-inspiring voice contained a thick killing intent. The red-robed Saint General turned cold. How was this possible? They were both peak Empyreans, so how could Divine Dream know what thoughts were in his mind? As he looked at Empyrean Divine Dream, all of his confidence faded away. Even his thoughts had been seen through. This was too terrifying. What you think of in your heart is your dream. In my divine dream space, all your dreams are open before me. There are no secrets you can keep. Empyrean Divine Dream icily said, seeming as if she could drown the red-robed Saint General in ice. Divine Dream Space. As its name suggested, it was a boundless dreamland and originally possessed an unfathomable effect on the mind. The red-robed Saint General was placed within the divine dream space. In his shock, his mind had fallen to illusion, and thus it was naturally easy for Empyrean Divine Dream to pry into his thoughts. This was a terrifying force field. Facing Empyrean Divine Dream, the red-robed Saint General felt tiny and exposed, like a naked baby. If even his thoughts were seen through, how could he fight? Is she really only an Empyrean? The red-robed Saint General immediately thought, his heart beginning to waver. And at this time Empyrean Divine Dream naturally detected the flaw in the red-robed Saint General's mind. She waved her hand and the entire divine dream space rapidly darkened, all light vanishing. Or, it was more accurate to say that everything vanished, turning into dim chaos. Suppress. A single word seemed to transmit from boundless celestial temples. Infinite strength contracted, instantly turning into a massive star-sized suppress character in the divine dream space. With a loud rumble, even space and time seemed suppressed by this symbol. When the red-robed Saint General saw this symbol, he felt as if the force of innumerable stars was pressing down on his limbs with an amazing force, firmly keeping him locked down. He couldn't move. Realizing something was wrong with his body, the red-robed Saint General felt the coming of an inexplicable horror. Empyrean Divine Dream's laws suppressed not his body, but his soul and mind, making him unable to move. If he were to be struck by that suppressed symbol which gathered all of the power within the divine dream space, then it was likely he would disintegrate to nothing, with even his soul destroyed. Damn! Move for me! The red-robed Saint General howled. He grit his teeth and burnt his blood essence. Every wisp of blood essence pierced through the void, resonating with the world. It was like countless divine wheels spinning around and roaring, wanting to crush apart the mystical strength all around them. As he burned his blood essence, the red-robed Saint General's formidable strength erupted to its limits. The mystical strength binding him down began to shake and loosen. Ka. The seal was nearly demolished by the red-robed Saint General. Without a change of expression, without even opening her eyes, Empyrean Divine Dream floated forwards, a lofty beauty that emitted a holy brilliance. A jade-white finger slowly stretched out, casually drawing another suppress character in the void. This suppress character rapidly expanded in space, quickly turning into another star-sized symbol that came pressing down on the Saint General. Bang! The void shook. The suppress character crashed onto the red-robed Saint General's body. The universe seemed to collapse as everything fell into endless darkness. The red-robed Saint General seemed to be struck by millions of planets, all of them colliding with him. His bones shattered and his flesh burned. He exhausted all of his strength to stop this suppressed character. I am not willing. How can I be killed by the likes of you in a place like this? The Saint General screamed, his eyes frightening. Boundless and majestic golden energy gushed out from his pores. Like countless small golden dragons roaring, the erupting aura shocked the heart. He knew that if he really fell into the endless darkness behind him and the world contracted onto him, he would die without a grave. But no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't rid himself of the suppressed character atop his head. This simple symbol contained an inexhaustible strength that left one drowning in hopelessness. Then at this time, rumble, 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 a crazy power surged forth and the divine dream space shivered. From the Saint Race army, the Golden Crown Empyrean had attacked. The flesh of his right hand had turned into a blood-red lance that pierced through the void. This lance was 10,000 feet long and incredibly sharp and dense, impossible to withstand. A boundless blood vitality flooded out in all directions, so potent that it even squeezed out the mystical strength exuded by the stars. He came from one of the special clans within the Saint race. His supernatural bloodline power was this blood-red lance. It was known as the strongest lance amongst the saints, able to penetrate everything. He watched as the red-robed Saint General was soon to be defeated by Divine Dream and had no choice but to help. When martial artists dueled, others butting their way in or launching sneak attacks wasn't honorable at all. But at this time, how could he care about such things? But as the Golden Crown Empyrean attacked, his eyes as he looked at Empyrean Divine Dream were filled with bewilderment. Was she an Empyrean or a true divinity? Chapter 1921, Emperor Sokia. Chapter 1921, Emperor Sokia. Wong wong wong. The blood-red spear was unstoppable. It tore through the cosmos. During a bitter battle between peak Empyreans, another peak Empyrean had launched a sneak attack. CA. The divine dream space was torn open. The blood-red spear pierced in, thrusting straight towards the point between Empyrean Divine Dream's eyebrows. The Golden Crown Empyrean was crimson with effort. He attacked without holding anything back. Seeing the blood-red spear shoot towards her, Empyrean Divine Dream floated backwards. Her beautiful eyes opened and a light melody began to bloom from between her cherry-red lips. Although the sound was faint, it was enchanting and wondrous. In that moment, the surrounding space seemed to have a marvelous reaction to this faint sound. Within the pitch-black space, starlight surged. Immediately, heavenly sounds appeared like sunshine reviving the dark world, all of it flowing out from Empyrean Divine Dream's body. From the emptiness of space, sublime luminescence shot out. True phoenixes appeared, dancing in the universe. All sorts of beautiful sights began appearing in the dark universe. Seeing this, Lin Ming's pupils contracted. Dream Soul Immortal Melody. At the Divine Realm First Martial Meeting, Lin Ming had personally experienced Frost Dream's immortal melody. It was because of this that he had tied with her. As this mysterious melody appeared, from within the peaceful world, infinite killing intent rose. Underneath the hands of Empyrean Divine Dream, the Dream Soul Immortal Melody was countless times more formidable than Frost Dream's version. In an infinitely fascinating illusion, divine mountains appeared, floating up and down in space. Towering spiritual trees reached into the skies, on equal ground with the heavens. These divine mountains floated atop planets. The planets roared as they crashed into that blood-red lance. As for the true phoenixes, they flapped their wings and flames swept through the world, surrounding the Golden Crown Empyrean. Raging flames even burnt through the void, as if a sheet of black paper had been ignited. The Golden Crown Empyrean trembled. Beneath the high heat, his flesh and blood seemed to be baking and burning. As the blood-red lance was struck by those planets, it began to crack apart. It wasn't just the primal god Empyreans that were shocked, but even the human Empyreans were left dumbfounded. Divine Dream, she seems to have made a breakthrough. Skyrend Godlord and Great Limitless Buddha had only ever heard rumors of Divine Dream's prestige and strength. Neither of them had truly seen her fight. In the divine realm, although Empyrean divine dream had used her divine dream space before, it had always been seen as ethereal and wonderful, filled with a mystical rhythm and an exquisite aesthetic sense. Never before had it been used in such a horrifying manner, ringing with killing intent. The top human powerhouses could feel that from the start, Empyrean divine dream had been fighting with everything she had, without holding anything back. With her own power she contended with two peak Saint Empyreans. And, it was obvious that she had completely suppressed the both of them. This was a nearly unimaginable strength. Skyrend Godlord and Great Limitless Buddha both felt they were far inferior to her. This woman, how could she be so fierce? Amongst the saint race Empyreans, another person moved. A great black bow appeared in his hands. He stepped forth into the void. Blood shot out from his hands, forming into a blood arrow. With a deep roar, the bowstring tightened again without end. All light in the surrounding space seemed to gather on the tip of the arrow, causing everything to tremble. Endless strength gathered onto the arrow points, aimed straight towards the distant Empyrean divine dream. The arrow point exuded a boundless shaking. Pitch-black ripples appeared, spreading out in all directions. This strength was mighty and forceful, giving off a feeling that it could even pierce through the cosmos, a completely irresistible attack. All starlight for 1,000,000 miles began to sway and distort. The essence of the starlight began to gather towards the arrow point. More and more energy gathered. The arrow began to howl as black light appeared around it. Whoosh! The blood-red divine arrow that gathered the endless starlight pierced through space and vanished without a trace. This all-annihilating arrow shot to the edge of the divine dream space. Once the arrow arrived at its target, it would be 3 against 1. 3 peak Empyreans to fight divine dream, and at this time, light bloomed. A golden Buddha diagram spanned through space. It was incomparably large and shined with an eternal light, bathing the surrounding space in a warming glow. In the boundless Buddha light, small Buddhas appeared. These Buddhas sat cross-legged within the endless Buddha light, reciting ancient texts. The broad texts gathered together, shaking the world. The great Buddha diagram collided with the pitch-black arrow. Waves of ringing sounds echoed through the world. A boundless explosive light submerged all. Finally, that black arrow vanished, completely submerged by this Buddhic light. To bully one with so many, do you really think there is no one in my human race? A cold voice resounded in space. The one who had moved was Emperor Sakya. His figure floated in the center of the giant golden Buddha diagram. His handsome face was flooded with a chilling killing intent. It was rumored that even though Emperor Sakya was young, his strength had already surpassed that of Great Limitless Buddha. He was the #1 master of Mount Potala. In his hand, a wisp of black light glowed before being erased, as if he were extinguishing a candle. His aura was deep and unbreakable like a prison, unfathomably deep. The anger on his face was like a volcano soon to erupt. Emperor Sakya had blocked that cosmos-shaking arrow, his actions shocking the Saint Empyreans. In particular, the peak Empyrean who shot out the arrow had a dignified look in his eyes. That arrow just now had been condensed from that peak Empyrean's blood vitality and energy. He didn't know how much strength Emperor Sakya had used to block it, but he had used at least 80% of his strength. Emperor Sakya's body emitted a blinding radiance, like a great sun rising in space, dazzling to the eyes. His eyes opened and endless Buddhic light swirled in his palms, forming a vast dharmic wheel. In the center of this dharmic wheel, 6 masses of power appeared, each one containing the irresistible strength of a samsara. In the center of each mass of power, the figure of Emperor Sakya appeared. Whirl, whirl, whirl. These figures of Emperor Sakya emitted light that distorted the void. Like a boundless vortex, this light covered the world. Bang! The 6 Emperor Sakyas in the center of these 6 samsaras joined together with Emperor Sakya's true body. They began to drag in the figure of the peak Empyrean with the pitch-black bow. This was a fierce battle. You are courting death. The Saint Empyrean was enraged. He drew his bow and shot again and again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Pitch-black shadows tore through the void, carrying with them a heaven-destroying momentum as millions of beams of black light appeared. These black lights were from the peak Saint Empyrean, shooting arrow after arrow. Each arrow was infused with blood essence, easily able to pierce through a planet. But those seemingly mighty black arrows were useless in front of Emperor Sokya. Each arrow was stopped by the endless light of the golden Buddha diagram, melting away. Emperor Sokya's 6 great avatars formed a Buddha diagram with his main body. Within this Buddha diagram, every Emperor Sokya was covered with a martial intent. With the main body and the avatars added together, there were 7 martial intents. This was the basis of Emperor Sokya's martial art. In the past, Emperor Sokya divided himself into 1 billion avatars, each avatar comprehending 7 martial intents on their own and finally fusing them together. In terms of achievements in martial intents, Emperor Sokya had already reached the peak. It was impossible for anyone to surpass him in this aspect. The 7 layers of martial intents suddenly evolved into 6 samsaras. An incomparably powerful true meaning of the great Tao swirled in space. His fists were like planets, his pupils like suns. His vast and boundless aura locked in the surrounding world, suppressing all. Inexhaustible Buddhic light shot out from his body, brutally battling with the Saint Empyrean before him. Bang! 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 The sounds of explosions continued without end. That Saint Empyrean with astonishing archery skills was pushed back again and again by Emperor Sokya's tide-like barrage. Explosions blew up in the void behind him. As the peak Saint Empyrean was forced backwards, the pressure on him increased with each step. His face became increasingly grim. This Saint Empyrean was still able to barely defend against Emperor Sokya. Although he wasn't Emperor Sokya's match, the difference wasn't too great. He wouldn't be immediately defeated. But as he turned his head to see Divine Dream fighting the 2 Saint Empyreans, he discovered that their situation was even worse than his own. There were 2 of them, and the strength of those 2 was considered to be at the pinnacle of all Saint Empyreans. Yet they were single-handedly beaten down by Divine Dream alone, with a chance that their lives would be ended. It had to be known that once one reached the level of a peak Empyrean, it was difficult to die unless a true divinity attacked. "We should retreat," the bow-wielding Empyrean told the other peak Empyreans with a sound transmission. It was already impossible for them to win. Staying here would only mean more casualties. Withdraw. As the red-robed Saint General desperately resisted the Divine Dream Space's symbol attack, he grit his teeth and sent out a sound transmission. The Saint Race Empyreans all felt humiliated by this. For these past years they had domineeringly wandered through the divine realm, and even human Empyreans were afraid to fight them. Yet, today they were the ones being beaten up instead. Chapter 1922, Absolute Victory. Chapter 1922, Absolute Victory. Good. Well done. The shames of today will be avenged in the future. Just wait for my Saint Race's good fortune Saint Sovereign to kill his way into the divine realm and exterminate your entire race. Some Saint Race Empyreans boastfully blustered. So what if the human Empyreans were stronger? No matter how fierce Emperor Sokya was, he was only 10 to 20% stronger than a normal peak Empyrean, and no matter how overwhelming Divine Dream was, even if she could suppress several peak Empyreans together, if she were to meet the true divinity-level good fortune Saint Sovereign, then she wouldn't be his match at all. Heh. You still want to run? Keep on dreaming. Skyrend Godlord immediately saw through the Saint Army's plan of escaping. He roared out loud and waved his sleeves. A clear and holy energy shot out, as if a great universe existed within it. A wave of swallowing power swept towards the group of Saint Empyreans. A world dancing within the palm. Great limitless Buddha spread out his palms and relics shined in his hands, their brilliance spreading through the cosmos. Wherever this Buddhic light covered, loud Buddhist chants resounded like the 8 guardians of Buddhism, Devas and Yakshas, a trillion arhats, all of them appearing together. For a time, the surrounding space for 1,000,000 miles was covered by this seething spiritual light. On this side of the battlefield, the light of blood shined bright and the smell of death filled the air. Arcs of red lightning and strands of Buddhist chants intersected, collided, causing massive tracts of space to collapse and crack apart beneath the savage impact of energy. The heavenly Tao laws collided and distorted, even muddling space. A potent strength destroyed all. However, the Saint race Empyreans wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. They counterattacked, resisting the human race together. Many Saint Empyreans took out their Empyrean spirit treasures. Divine light flashed and astral essence turbulently flowed out. There were Saint Empyreans whose fists smashed open the void, like meteors passing through space. In terms of quantity, the Saint Empyreans had the advantage. When they combined their strength together, they were able to rival the human Empyreans. But the many world kings and holy lords weren't as lucky. Saint race spirit ships were swept into energy storms, instantly blowing up. The martial artists on board were ejected into the vacuum of space, half of them immediately killed. "Form the array," a Saint race Empyrean shouted out loud. In a battle between Empyreans, the strength of world kings and holy lords was almost negligible. But if their strength was gathered together through a spirit ship's grand array formation, then their fused strength could not be underestimated. At the very least, escaping wouldn't be a problem. The Saint race Empyreans were already steadily taking steps to retreat, and once they fled the battlefield it would be hard for humanity to catch up to them. "Focus your efforts and kill their elites," Empyrean Divine Dream said. Her divine dream space covered two Saint Empyreans. They were the Saint General and the Golden Crown Empyrean. Among the Saint Army, these were the two strongest individuals. Divine Dream's intentions were clear. She wanted to cut down these two individuals. Emperor Sokia joined in. He gave up his assault on the other Empyreans and hurtled towards these two peak Empyreans. In the 7 universes of the Saint race there were many Empyreans. But peak Empyreans were still extremely rare, and every death of a peak Empyrean was still an enormous loss to the Saints. Moreover, these two people were the main commanders in the Saint race army's invasion of the Divine Realm. Damn it! The Gold Crown Empyrean was incensed as he discovered that Divine Dream had locked onto him. He howled. His skin and flesh cracked open, revealing white tendons. These tendons were extremely tenacious. They were a part of his supernatural bloodline powers. As he attached these tendons to his blood lance, the lance hummed and shivered, causing the surrounding space to vibrate and mystical runes to circle around it. Light gathered, forming an incomparably black divine light. The lance thrust out. The space around the black light cracked planets, able to pierce through the void and twist the laws of the heavens and earth. Whoosh! With this strike, the Saint race Empyrean's body shivered. He had clearly consumed a great deal of energy. The blood lance was like a black hole, swallowing light and energy wherever it went, constantly expanding as it continued forwards with an overwhelming momentum. As the divine dream space was struck by this attack from a peak Empyrean consuming their blood essence, it was nearly punctured. But at the same time, Emperor Sokia's eyes glittered with a cold light. His main body as well as those 6 martial intent avatars plunged into the golden Buddha diagram. Like 7 supreme Buddhas, they floated like 7 stars within the Buddha diagram. Endless golden light emitted from their bodies, resonating with the Buddha diagram and evolving into 6 incomparably realistic scenes. In the fathoms of hell, seas of blood boiled over. Mountains of bones piled high into the skies as hungry ghosts scavenged through the ground, howling with deathly hunger. In the heavens, goddesses fluttered about, the sounds of celestial dragons reaching through the horizon. Above these 6 images, a grand golden Buddhist temple stood tall. Countless ancient Buddhas sat atop a mountain of lotus thrones, their ancient mudras flooding this world. Emperor Sokia had evolved a great world of the 6 paths of samsara. Emperor Sokia's strike contained the true meaning of the 6 paths of samsara, the 7 layers of martial intents, as well as the supreme treasure of Buddhism, the wheel of samsara. Together, they formed a strange and singular harmony that emitted a vast might. This was one of Emperor Sokia's manifestations after comprehending the true meaning of Buddhist martial intents to their pinnacle. The true meaning of the 6 paths of samsara were like grinding pans of the great Tao that ruthlessly grinded down upon the black hole blood lance. The Buddhas arrived, their light like a tide, their sound like thunder. The rays of Buddhic light were blinding and thicker than a mountain. As they flowed down from up high, the void tore apart and even planets exploded. This Buddhic light finally fell upon the Gold Crown Empyrean. Bang! The Saint Empyrean violently shook. Wherever his body was covered in this Buddhic light it would explode, causing him to vomit mouthfuls of blood. And at this time, Divine Dream also attacked. Within the Divine Dream space, countless towering trees appeared that blocked out the void for 10,000 miles, bringing with them a premonition of certain death. The Golden Crown Empyrean was pierced through the chest by one of these ancient trees, causing him to spit out even more blood. The Golden Crown Empyrean cried out in suffering, his face twisted and fierce. Arclight. The death of the rabbit is also the sorrow of the fox. As the red-robed Saint General saw that it was impossible for his companion to escape, he howled in anger and indignation, wildly burning his bloodline. The red-robed Saint General no longer cared about consequences. As a saint race Empyrean, his bloodline was his foundation. By burning his bloodline in this manner, it was possible he would even drop cultivation boundaries. But at the same time, the strength he gained from burning his blood was terrifying to the extreme. It would be similar to half the strength from an ordinary true divinity. His body turned into a beam of divine light that directly tore open the divine dream space and fled deep into the cosmos. But behind him, with a loud cracking noise, the thunder-like sounds that Emperor Sokia cast out materialized into substantialized sonic waves that rolled out in all directions without end. The Golden Crown Empyrean, whose body was pierced through by the heaven-towering tree, began to crack apart. He cried out in pain, his entire body dripping with blood. Each drop of blood was amazingly bright. As it splashed out into space it whistled like meteors, containing a potent power. His body was struck in the thunderous rumble. More and more trees pierced through his body. Finally, his entire body burst apart, turning into a sea of blood fog. The Golden Crown Empyrean was one of the commanders of the Saints' army within the divine realm. But today, he had perished here. As for the other commander, the red-robed Saint General, he didn't hesitate in suffering heavy losses, even possibly dropping cultivation boundaries, to flee the battlefield. In this battle, of the Saint Army's two high commanders, one was heavily wounded and the other had died. This could be called a total victory for humanity. The divine dream space gradually faded away. Empyrean Divine Dream's sacred and holy figure began to slowly reappear. Her body was bathed in a haze of profound spirit power, without a trace of the mortal world around her. "We're leaving." Empyrean Divine Dream decisively issued a stern evacuation order. It was unwise to pursue a desperate foe. Moreover, this was the domain of the saints, and the human army shouldn't enter too deeply, otherwise it was possible for them to suffer annihilation. At this time, the Ark of Hope flew forwards with extreme speed. In black clothes Lin Ming stepped out from the Ark of Hope. Behind him, Di Wuhen, Tabague, and the other ancient race Empyreans also emerged. The ancient race Empyreans were overjoyed. They had seen life after death and had also experienced the strength of humanity. They felt as if this trip to the divine realm was worth the difficulties. Junior Lin Ming greets Senior Divine Dream. Lin Ming bowed in the void. At this time he felt extreme gratefulness. In order to rescue him, Divine Dream had accepted the potential risk of utter extermination to arrive here with the elites of humanity. This was a kindness he would mark down in his mind. "It's good that you are safe," Empyrean Divine Dream said with a long breath. It was only now Lin Ming realized that even though Divine Dream seemed light and indifferent all this time, the truth was that she was slightly pale beneath the fog that shrouded her face. "Senior Divine Dream?" Lin Ming asked, concerned. But Empyrean Divine Dream only waved her hand to indicate that she was fine. At this time, Xiao Moxian had rushed forth like a gust of wind to throw herself into Lin Ming's arms. "Big brother Lin." Since Lin Ming's great battle with the good fortune Saint's son, over 20 years had passed. Xiao Moxian had been pregnant all this time as she waited for Lin Ming's return, but during this period she never heard any news about him. This distress she felt during this time could be imagined. Lin Ming held on to Xiao Moxian, lightly stroking her luxurious black hair. He softly said in her ear, "I'm fine." The two people supported each other. But at this time, Empyrean Divine Dream waved her hand and the surrounding scenery instantly changed. Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian, and Empyrean Divine Dream immediately arrived in the White Jade Palace. Millimeter? Lin Ming was startled. He thought that Empyrean Divine Dream would first meet with Di Wuhen, Tabague, and the others, but she had instead chosen to directly return to the palace instead. As soon as they entered the palace, Divine Dream shuddered and a bright white light began shining from within her body. This white light shined bright, moving outwards until it finally separated from Divine Dream's body. Slowly, the white light condensed into the figure of a person, a young girl. In space, she held onto her knees. Her body was naked, but her thick waterfall of icy blue hair covered her curves. Only her beautiful face and perfect arms and legs showed on the outside. There was not the slightest flaw in her jade-like skin and the tone of her muscles. At this time, the young girl's eyebrows were pressed together, as if she were in pain. Tiche's sight was enough to rouse the sympathy of anyone. This young girl was none other than Frost Dream, the one Lin Ming had fought at the Divine Realm First Martial Meeting. This is... Lin Ming was shocked. He had already heard that Frost Dream was Divine Dream's plan in order to break into the true divinity realm. Divine Dream had severed her primordial spirit, reincarnating that portion of her soul in order to create an avatar. It was said that once Frost Dream became a peak Empyrean, Divine Dream would fuse together with her, and together they would break into the realm of true divinity, even becoming an outstanding existence amongst true divinities. But now, there was still a massive disparity between Frost Dream and a peak Empyrean, yet Empyrean Divine Dream had fused with her. Was it for that battle just now? Lin Ming suddenly recalled the battle. Although Empyrean Divine Dream seemed light and unperturbed the entire time and her steps were also calm, the truth was that she had consumed a considerable amount of strength. In order to ensure absolute victory, Empyrean Divine Dream had chosen to temporarily fuse with Frost Dream in order to be in the strongest state possible for a short period of time. This state was highly taxing on Empyrean Divine Dream. Thus, her face was pale and she instantly separated from Frost Dream as soon as the battle finished. Because of many reasons, this sight couldn't be seen by outsiders. So, Empyrean Divine Dream didn't greet the ancient race powerhouses first and had instead immediately brought Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian into Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. Chapter 1923, Evacuate. Chapter 1923, Evacuate. Senior Divine Dream, are you alright? Lin Ming was highly concerned about Divine Dream's situation. In truth, he understood that Divine Dream had yet to break into the true divinity realm. She was just a tiny bit away. If Divine Dream didn't temporarily fuse together with Frost Dream and only fought with her true self, then although she could still suppress a peak Empyrean, wanting to prevent them from escaping and killing them was extremely difficult. Moreover, that Golden Crown Empyrean and red-robed Saint General were both outstanding Saint Empyreans. At this time, blue misty light began glowing around Frost Dream. This misty light gathered on her supple figure, turning into a blue dress. Frost Dream stretched her body. Floating in the air, she reached back her hands and flipped out her hair. As her long hair fell back in waves, fragrant wind blew through the air, enchanting the senses. Miss Frost Dream. Lin Ming greeted. Frost Dream nodded in return, responding with Sir Lin, before composing herself and remaining quiet. Lin Ming then discovered that Frost Dream's cultivation had reached the World King realm. Compared to himself, she was even faster. However, this was normal. Frost Dream was Divine Dream's avatar and had Divine Dream's soul as her foundation. Frost Dream's cultivation speed would naturally be exorbitantly fast, and with the invasion of the Saints, Divine Dream must have also decided to speed up Frost Dream's breakthroughs in order to quickly step into true divinity. You've heard that it was a black-clothed woman who sent me a sound transmission saying that you were in the Primeval universe? Do you know who that woman is? Divine Dream asked Lin Ming. She clearly had some understandings of the Primeval universe. Junior believes that this woman was likely Soul Empress Sheng Mai. Lin Ming said, glancing at Xiao Moxian. Xiao Moxian was astonished, but as she thought about it, it could only be her. That woman had been shrouded in a black fog and was incomparably mysterious. Even so, Xiao Moxian was able to faintly feel the terrifying strength that lurked beneath the surface. Out of all the woman Lin Ming knew, Only Shungmai could know so much and have such abilities. Let us return first. Now isn't the time to stay here. This is the Saints' universe, it is too dangerous. As Divine Dream spoke, the fleet turned around and flew towards the Divine Realm. After several great void shifts, the fleet returned to the God-lamenting wall. Because of the great calamity, the God-lamenting wall connecting this Saint race universe and the Divine Realm was extremely fragile. Skyrend Godlord was able to forcefully form a connection through it. The fleet returned to the Divine Realm in glory and victory. Looking at these familiar starry skies and feeling the familiar heaven and earth origin energy, Lin Ming bathed himself in the atmosphere. The Divine Realm, he had finally returned. During this trip he had been gone for over 20 years. He had been to the Soul World and Primeval Universe, risking his life several times and now finally returning safely. Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, within a grand hall of white jade. The human Empireans and ancient race Empireans had gathered together. Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian were also included. You are descendants of the ancient races from 10 billion years past. For many human Empireans, this was the first time they learned of the status of these ancient race Empireans. The fame and magnificence of the ancient races from 10 billion years ago was too far-reaching and resounding. It was only that in the present era, they had declined to a miserable state. Yes, we have been fighting with the saints for many years now. The reason we fled this time was little brother Lin's suggestion. But during the process, we encountered the good fortune Saint Sovereign and were almost annihilated. Once upon a time, being from the ancient races was Di Wuhen's pride. But now he felt that there just wasn't anything to be proud of. What? You encountered the good fortune Saint Sovereign, then you. The human Empireans were panic-stricken at hearing Di Wuhen's words. They had encountered the good fortune Saint Sovereign and managed to survive somehow. At this time, Divine Dream slowly said, "Everyone, quiet yourselves. The good fortune Saint Sovereign has been severely wounded by the joint efforts of the ancient race martial artists, Lin Ming, and Empyrean Primordius. He is currently recovering from his injuries, and moreover, the ancient races and Lin Ming have brought the path to salvation for us. Perhaps, it is finally time for our human race to experience a favorable turn." As Divine Dream slowly spoke, all of the human Empireans present were dumbstruck. The information contained in her words was far too great. Heavily wound the good fortune Saint Sovereign? How had they done that? Moreover, how was this related to Empyrean Primordius who had perished 100,000 years ago? The path to salvation? What was that? As the human Empireans were puzzled, Divine Dream looked at Lin Ming and said, "Why don't you come up and explain it yourself?" Whether it was the ancient races or the human race, Lin Ming was the greatest contributor to there being such a favorable turn, to bring back the method to salvation from the Azura Forbidden Land, to renew the God decrees, to contend with the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Lin Ming's function during all of this was irreplaceable. Lin Ming nodded. At a brisk pace, without showing arrogance or being subservient, he explained everything that had happened during his adventure through the Soul World and Primeval Universe. The only things he omitted were the strange words Shungmai had said to him. The human Empireans were dumbfounded upon hearing this. They knew that Lin Ming had left by himself, headed towards the world of the Spiriters to seek out a path to salvation for humanity. But, almost no one had thought he would succeed. In the eyes of those people, his actions had been nothing more than a joke. Just what cultivation did Lin Ming have? Before he left, he was only able to defeat a great world king. And what humanity faced was a terrifying and massive race that had multiple true divinities and over 1,000 Empireans. In the impending universal calamity, Lin Ming couldn't even be called a small wave. Even the human Empireans felt the situation was hopeless and had nearly succumbed to sitting down and waiting for death. In such an atmosphere, Lin Ming had gone to seek out a road for humanity to take. Was that even possible? But the actual result had left them all bewildered. Lin Ming had truly found the method to salvation. It wasn't a way to directly face the saints, but instead an escape route for humanity. Just an escape route was not enough. In the divine realms 3,000 great worlds and innumerable other worlds, There were countless great human influences. If all of these influences had to be notified and evacuated, that would be a mission of monumental proportions. If the saint race decided to launch their all-out invasion of the divine realm now, then humanity would have no time to flee. But Lin Ming had joined together with the ancient races and had managed to wound the good fortune saint sovereign, buying time for humanity in the process. This was just unbelievable. Many human Empireans looked at Lin Ming with amazement in their eyes. When Lin Ming left the divine realm to go to the soul world and primeval universe, he could be said to have created a miracle. He had done a great service for humanity and could nearly be compared to Empyrean divine seal of 3.6 billion years ago. Everyone should be clear on what the method is, that is, before the saint's total invasion begins, we shall evacuate to one of the wild universes within the 33 heavens. The divine realm has over 1 quadrillion people, and there are even more people in the lower realms. To evacuate them all is a completely impossible task. But we can evacuate the elites and preserve our martial arts civilization and inheritances. In other words, for at least the next 100,000 years, the general human population will have to live beneath the oppression of the saints. As for the elites of humanity, they must face the wilderness of the 33 heavens, suffering the difficulties to develop it and survive there. As for the future, whether we are eliminated or find a chance to breathe, all of that will depend on the next 100,000 years. In that group of elites who develop within the wilderness, we shall see whether or not we can raise proud children of heaven who can resist the saints. If we can, then we shall slaughter our way back to the divine realm and destroy the saints. If we cannot, then we can only wait to perish. After all, the God-lamenting wall is not an absolute protection. Empyrean divine dream's words caused the human Empyreans to fall silent. Of the 33 heavens, 7 heavens belong to the spiriters, 7 heavens belong to the saints, 1 heaven was the primeval universe, and another heaven was the divine realm. In total this was 16 heavens. Besides these 16 heavens there were also 17 more. These 17 heavens were deathlands or wildernesses. Because of the Great Hundred Race War from 10 billion years ago, these universes had slowly declined. Moreover, the God-lamenting walls dividing these universes were extremely firm, unlike the walls dividing the divine realm and saint universes. The walls between the divine realm and saint universes would weaken in cycles until they finally completely vanished. Thus, for all this time, these 17 heavens had never had intelligent humanoid life forces exist within them. If the human elites were to use the Azura decree to penetrate through the God-lamenting wall and go to these abandoned heavens, it would undoubtedly mean a bitter and grueling journey. Many people would die as they pioneered new lands. Even those that survived would have to face the greedy gazes of the saints, unsure whether they would live to see the next day. Many human martial artists understood this. They knew just what it meant to escape into the wild universes. Moreover, they had heavy hearts upon thinking about abandoning the common people of the divine realm. But there was nothing they could do about this. After all, the elites of humanity were the targets of the saints. If these elites were killed, then that would be the same as wiping out humanity's inheritances. As for the common folk, the truth was that they held no value for the saints. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall became much more gloomy. Lin Ming had indeed discovered a path for humanity. But this path was filled with thorns. Empyrean divine dream slowly stood up. I, as well as all disciples of Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, have already decided to leave the divine realm and develop ourselves in the wild universes. As for the rest of you, you can decide whether you wish to join me or stay in the divine realm. I understand that you have feelings for your homeland, and to abandon the home you've known all your life is a difficult choice. But, sometimes, you have to abandon what you know. To leave means facing unknown perils and shouldering the burden of being humanity's hopes and futures. To stay means living underneath the heel and oppression of the saints, struggling in battle. No matter what path you choose, your journey will be incredibly difficult. My only hope is that no matter when in the future, none of you will easily give up. This is because humanity truly stands on the precipice of life or death. 3.6 billion years ago, we were indeed defeated, but even then we still retained the divine realm. But if we are to be defeated again now, then we truly will not have any road to escape to. Empyrean Divine Dream's words were heavy and grim. All of the human Empyreans held their breath. For a time, the entire grand hall was silent, and even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard. Everyone faintly realized this was an important meeting that concerned the future of humanity. I represent Mount Potala to say that we will leave the divine realm and follow Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. The first to speak was Great Limitless Buddha. The truth was that before this meeting began, he had already known of the situation. He was only making his stance clear here. I will also follow Empyrean Divine Dream. Me too. Empyrean after Empyrean opened their mouth, all of them willing to follow Empyrean Divine Dream. To abandon the divine realm was the only choice they could make in such a helpless situation. Good. Divine Dream took a deep breath. If that's the case, then let us not delay. We will disperse now and assemble the various great influences to prepare the evacuation. The good fortune Saint Sovereign may be heavily wounded, but the most he will need is several years to recover. We must use this period of time to complete the evacuation mission and bring as many people as we can in the time limit. Chapter 1924, Astral Vault God King. Chapter 1924, Astral Vault God King. Primeval Universe, within the infinite deeps. In the space that the good fortune Saint Sovereign was hidden in, over 20 Saint Empyreans in full battle attire had laid down a good fortune grand array. In addition, there were many world kings and holy lords. They were distributed at the edges of the good fortune grand array, supporting it. The Saint Empyreans had grim complexions. This was because the divine realm's red-robed Saint General had led the dregs of his defeated forces back here. The Golden Crown Empyrean had perished and the red-robed Saint General had been forced to burn his blood essence, causing his cultivation to drop. To the saints, this was an unprecedented, disastrous loss. But as these defeated troops came to the Primeval Universe, only then did they learn that the good fortune Saint Sovereign, before issuing his order, had been severely wounded by the joint efforts of Lin Ming and the ancient races and was now recovering. This left them all dumbstruck. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was an outstanding existence even amongst true divinities. Even with the ancient race Empyreans and Lin Ming added together, how could they possibly have wounded the good fortune Saint Sovereign? His Majesty Saint Sovereign, the red-robed Saint General, was embittered. He had originally angrily come back, wanting to report the situation to the good fortune Saint Sovereign so that the good fortune Saint Sovereign would mobilize his full army to trample over the divine realm. But what he learned was actually something almost unbelievable. His Majesty has closed up in seclusion, no one may see him, the Empyreans responsible for protecting these grounds said. The red-robed Saint General gulped, feeling his head aching. The Saint race was at least 10 times more powerful than the primal god race, so how did that battle turn out with such a strange result? As the good fortune Saint Sovereign was in seclusion, the red-robed Saint General could only wait. He faintly guessed that this period of seclusion would not be short. It would be at least 2 to 3 years. At this time, a terrifying pressure arrived, like a galactic storm sweeping through the cosmos. Underneath this tremendous pressure, all holy lords and world kings were forced to their knees. Although the saint race Empyreans weren't suppressed to such a miserable degree, they still felt their hearts race with fear. Without a doubt, this sort of pressure could only belong to a true divinity. All of the saint martial artists rapidly bowed towards the void. They felt a vast sea of astral essence swell towards them. This was proof that the one arriving was a saint race true divinity. At this time, the void trembled. A massive face appeared in the space 1,000,000 miles away. This face seemed to be carved from metal, solemn and mighty, possessing an astonishing character. As the saint martial artists saw this giant face, they shivered. Astral Vault God King. In the saint race's 7 heavens there was more than one true divinity. Generally speaking, the true divinities of the saints were extremely mysterious. They seldom appeared, and even the common people didn't know how many true divinities were in the saint race or what their titles were. Astral Vault God King, one of the hidden god kings of the saint world. It is said that he is 100 million years older than His Majesty Saint Sovereign. Astral Vault God King, he shouldn't have come to harm the Saint Sovereign, right? Several peak Empyreans subordinate to the good fortune Saint Sovereign gulped as they thought of this. According to rumors, the good fortune Saint Sovereign was on ill terms with Astral Vault God King. It was said that they might have fought before, and it wouldn't be a surprise if there was some sort of personal grudge between them. Now that Astral Vault God King had arrived, if he really came to take revenge, then the Empyreans stationed here would only be able to stare helplessly on as he attacked the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Your Majesty, Astral Vault. Several Empyreans greeted in awe. Out of my way! Astral Vault God King shouted out loud, and these Empyreans were swept away as if they were caught in a storm. They could barely steady themselves as they felt completely helpless in their fear. They were subordinates of the good fortune Saint Sovereign. It wasn't likely that Astral Vault God King had any good impressions of them. Astral Vault God King slowly flew forwards to the space distortion that the good fortune Saint Sovereign had hidden in and sneered. With a mere thought, a massive metal hand stretched out from space. This hand casually moved and easily tore open the space distortion that the good fortune Saint Sovereign had closed up in. Then, Astral Vault God King stepped inside. The many Empyreans could only watch. They were unable to do anything, nor did they dare to do anything. All they could do was fervently hope that there would be no battle. If the good fortune Saint Sovereign was truly pushed to the edge, then he would detonate Famine's body. If so, then all the Empyreans here would perish in the aftermath. Within the endless darkness, two shadows faced each other. One was Astral Vault God King and the other was the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Within the void, Astral Vault God King's form was incomparably massive, like a structure formed from metal. He was completely without hair, not even eyelashes. His skull resembled polished crystal, translucent enough that one could faintly see his brain within. His appearance was extremely unique. Good fortune. Astral Vault God King's voice was as cold as metal as it filled the space distortion. How did you end up like this? Weren't you always a skilled one? You called me and Soaring Feather here, is it to beg for help? Astral Vault God King's voice had a mocking tone to it. The reason he came here was unexpectedly at the request of the good fortune Saint Sovereign. The good fortune Saint Sovereign looked at Astral Vault God King, no expression on his face. He only icily said, and Soaring Feather. Astral Vault God King raised his right hand and twiddled a feather between his fingers. He lazily said, she didn't feel the need to come and see you herself, but if we speak she will naturally be able to hear us. Is that so? I see. Soaring Feather didn't accept his invitation, but the good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't care. In the 7 heavens of the Saint race, the truth was that there were 3 true divinities. Soaring Feather God King was the only woman amongst them and her whereabouts were always a mystery. She had gone into seclusion long ago and many peak Empyreans didn't even know that there was such a true divinity amongst the saints. The good fortune Saint Sovereign looked at Astral Vault God King and unhurriedly said, the reason I called you here today is because I want you, as well as Soaring Feather, to lead the armies to trample over the divine realm and exterminate humanity. Although the good fortune Saint Sovereign was injured, his voice was filled with energy that shook the void. Astral Vault God King's eyes widened for a moment. Then, he began laughing. Ha 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 ha. Did I hear wrongly? You want me and Soaring Feather to exterminate humanity? Why? You don't need to mention something as mundane as the interests of our race to trick me. Although there are advantages to the saints in exterminating humanity, it's nothing at all to me. Did you think I wouldn't know that the reason you want to exterminate humanity is to accomplish your own goals? Why would Soaring Feather and I deign to help you? Astral Vault God King aggressively said. The good fortune Saint Sovereign fell silent. Then, he stretched out his hands. Above his palm, a black bead traced with red lines slowly revolved. This was the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Seeing the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, Astral Vault God King's eyes began to shine. This spirit bead was inestimably valuable to a body transformation system martial artist. If you and Soaring Feather assist me, then I will lend you this bead for 1 million years. But I have a requirement. When you destroy humanity, you must make sure you kill Lin Ming. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's voice was filled with killing intent. The reason he had hurriedly summoned the other two true divinities of the saint race here to have them attack the divine realm was because he had a deep foreboding feeling in his heart. He felt that Lin Ming had brought something important back to humanity. If he couldn't eliminate humanity here, then the troubles would never end. Once the wildfires burnt down the fields, the new grass would grow once more. In particular Lin Ming, his continued existence filled the good fortune Saint Sovereign with unease. He was an unknown factor. At the mere peak Holy Lord realm he was able to have such a great impact on the war of the saints against the human race and ancient races. If he was allowed to grow up, then he would certainly become a scourge upon the saints. Before this, he had taken Lin Ming lightly because of his cultivation. Now he was willing to do anything within his power to kill him. Grand Mist Spirit Bead. As the Astral Vault God King looked at this red and black bead, his eyes revealed a deep greed. What about it? Do you want to take it forever? The good fortune Saint Sovereign coldly sneered but didn't take away the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. He only glared at Astral Vault God King, saying, "You want to work together with Soaring Feather to take my life while I am injured and steal away the Grand Mist Spirit Bead?" The good fortune Saint Sovereign laid bare the thoughts within Astral Vault God King's heart. Astral Vault God King only lightly smiled, not responding. "You can give it a try, but I have ways to make you regret it." As the good fortune Saint Sovereign spoke, the massive body of famine began to wriggle underneath him, causing innumerable fountains of blood to gush out. Astral Vault God King's pupils narrowed. He looked at the good fortune Saint Sovereign, suspicion growing in his heart. He didn't know what hidden cards the good fortune Saint Sovereign had, but he was certain that there must be some secret on him. He even suspected that this concerned the Abyssals. In any case, even if he joined together with Soaring Feather to attack the good fortune Saint Sovereign, he didn't have full confidence that they would win. This was a purely instinctual feeling. To reach the cultivation of the true divinity realm, that meant one's destiny had accumulated to the peak. Like this, a martial artist would be able to develop vague premonitions in their hearts. Although it wasn't accurate every time, it was extremely valuable for reference. Chapter 1925, World Annihilation Crisis. Chapter 1925, World Annihilation Crisis. 4 months later, Mount Potala. This was the most glorious and oldest Empyrean Holy Land in the current history of humanity. Within Mount Potala, one could deeply feel the inside story of this land. The houses, the winding corridors, the paintings, and even the tiles, everything was deeply marked by history. 6 billion years ago, the true divinity leader of humanity, Divine Seal, had died. Most Empyreans had died in the battle and their Empyrean influences were destroyed with them, forever fading away into the sands of time. However, Mount Potala had remained fully intact. Within their library pavilions they collected numerous ancient texts on martial arts. All of this played a vital role in the continued development of humanity's martial arts civilization. At this time, when humanity teetered on the edge of extinction, the many rulers and elites of humanity gathered once more at Mount Potala to face the upcoming storm. Within Mount Potala, in a secret chamber of a Buddhist temple. This chamber was extremely peaceful. Wafts of incense smoke curled through the air. The walls were decorated with sculptures of towering golden arhats. Between these arhats, 8 thick columns supported the ceiling. Each column was carved with a golden dragon that emitted a magnificent atmosphere. These were the infamous 8 celestial dragon columns of Mount Potala. This chamber was one of Mount Potala's treasures, where eminent monks would come to calmly meditate. Now, Lin Ming was sitting on a cushion within this chamber. In front of him was an old man in plain and humble clothing. This old man's face was withered and his eye sockets were deeply inset. His skin was dark and grey and there was only a light smattering of hair atop his head. His hair was not silver or white, but dry and yellow, like dying grass. As he sat in front of Lin Ming, his entire body brimmed with a faint death energy, as if he were already dead. "Lin Ming, I've taught you everything I can. This is the entirety of my life's secret techniques. I hope that it will be useful to you." The old man slowly spoke. This old man was Dragonfang's honorable master, 3 Lives Old Man. Out of all the Empyreans of humanity, 3 Lives Old Man was unique and unconventional. Although he hadn't been able to break into true divinity, he had still managed to use all sorts of arcane techniques to live for 300 million years. He had experienced an incredible span of time and could be called a living history book of the human race. When Lin Ming returned to the Divine Realm, Divine Dream had convened all peak young elites of the Divine Realm, including Jun Blue Moon, Han Kai, Dragon Fang, and Xiao Moxian, and began their training. In this training they were allowed to freely choose from all the secret techniques of human Empyreans, without any hidden at all. Whatever they wanted to learn they could learn. In particular, Lin Ming was looked after and taken as a priority by all the Empyreans. A revered Empyrean didn't hesitate to consume his own cultivation to help Lin Ming straighten his meridians and eliminate the small problems that had accumulated from Lin Ming developing his foundation so quickly. But as for the Empyrean technique that Lin Ming finally chose, it was 3 Lives Pupils. This was also the only secret technique he chose. The other transcendent divine mites were indeed fierce, but to Lin Ming, who studied the Azura Heavenly Tao, they weren't too valuable. Only the 3 Lives Pupils would be useful to him. It was an auxiliary technique that could be used to directly increase Lin Ming's combat prowess. Lin Ming would be able to fuse it with his own Davic Eye so that they mutually complemented each other. It was as if this secret technique was tailor-made for Lin Ming all along. On the thick cushion, 3 Lives Old Man's eyes were still closed. You have opened the Davic Eye Dao Palace, and that has made you even more suitable to inherit my secret technique than Dragonfang. I have barely been managing to maintain a sad existence for 300 million years, and for me to have a direct descendant in Dragonfang and a half-descendant in you, I am glad I can see my own inheritances carried forwards in such a wondrous manner. When I die I can do so in peace. As 3 Lives Old Man spoke, Lin Ming deeply bowed. He solemnly said, I thank Senior for the kindness of your guidance. 3 Lives Old Man shook his head. He quietly said, I should be the one thanking you, and perhaps all of humanity should thank you. With Lin Ming's return, not only did he bring back the method to salvation for the human race, but he even brought back a jade slip copy of the Holy Scripture's golden pages. These golden page duplicates came from Sheng Mai. As a beyond divinity level cultivation method, even a duplicate was able to provide a tremendous inspiration to human Empyreans. This was especially true for Divine Dream, who cultivated energy and divine. The profound comprehensions of the soul contained within the golden pages were perfectly suited to her, so for these past days, Empyrean Divine Dream had gone into seclusion as she studied the golden pages thoroughly. In these short several months she had obtained incalculable inspirations. This was all in order to establish as solid a foundation as she could so she could step into the realm of true divinity as soon as possible. Gradually, the early steps in the evacuation work for humanity had been completed. The evacuation from the divine realm was occurring a step at a time. Those that could leave were the elites of humanity. Brother Lin, take this cup of wine. A young man handed him a cup of wine. There was a little bit of emotion on his face as well as a little bit of disappointment in himself. This person was White King, a direct disciple of the vast universe Holy Lands. He didn't have some life and death friendship with Lin Ming, they were only acquaintances that had met at the Divine Realm First Martial Meeting and could be considered ordinary friends. But due to the invasion of the Saints, and in a situation where humanity could perish at any moment, even 2 strangers of the same race could be like brothers. When parting approaching, the heart was always stirred. Lin Ming drank the wine. Brother Lin, you aren't going? Lin Ming shook his head, I'm not in a hurry. Lin Ming traced his spatial ring. This spatial ring contained the 3rd Emperor Jade of Fate. He wanted to go to the Azura Road and enter the 7th level of the final trial so he could obtain the highest completion percentage possible. Using this, he wanted to struggle for an opportunity to turn the tides of war against the Saint. But currently, the final trial had yet to open. White King walked away, leaving with the other elites of vast universe Heavenly Palace. Elites from other Empyrean influences joined them. What awaited them was a journey into an unknown and wild universe. This would be an adventure filled with hardship and slaughter. Lin Ming knew that White King was only part of the first group of people to leave. There would be a second group, third group, fourth group. This would continue until all the elites had left, until all the Empyrean heavenly palaces became deserted lands. Partings occurred everywhere. Masters sent off their disciples, sect masters sent off their disciples. Some people drank and bid farewell. Some hugged as tightly as they could. For those who were left behind, those that were leaving were family members, friends, comrades in arms. For those that were leaving, they would leave the universe they grew up in, their most beloved homeland, the land of their ancestors, their bloodline, the happiness and laughter, their pain and sorrow. Lin Ming deeply sighed. He turned and left, no longer participating in these sad partings. He had too many matters to attend to. Every breath of time, every hour, was extremely precious to him. Time passed a day at a time. With every period of time, another group of people left. Lin Ming had no idea how many people had departed, but at this time, the situation suddenly changed. A panic-stricken world king rushed into Mount Potala. He brought with him terrible news. The saints had begun their full invasion of the divine realm. Many people were stunned. The good fortune Saint Sovereign had clearly been grievously wounded by Lin Ming and the ancient races, so how could he have recovered so quickly? And if the good fortune Saint Sovereign wasn't leading the troops, then if the saint armies were to invade the divine realm, they were bound to suffer serious casualties. How is this possible? Empyrean vast universe was completely shocked. Deep in his heart he didn't want to believe such terrifying news. He hoped there had been some sort of mistake. But following that, the blooded and almost disabled world king was escorted away and another piece of news was brought in. That was, the human Empyreans guarding the great worlds closest to the saints had all died in battle. The saints had truly begun their invasion. Moreover, the scale of this invasion was even greater than the invasion of the Primeval universe. After all, the divine realm battlefield was far broader and every army could be utilized to their limit. At this time, humanity also learned that there was a true divinity leading the invasion of the saints. His name was Astral Vault God King. Nobody had heard this name before, but just his status as a true divinity was enough to cause all Empyreans present to feel a heavy pressure. A great saint army led by a true divinity, this was simply impossible to contend with. So it is another true divinity of the saints that is leading their armies. The good fortune Saint Sovereign is really recovering from his wounds, Empyrean Divine Dream sighed as she obtained the news. Even though Astral Vault God King was weaker than the good fortune Saint Sovereign, he still wasn't something they could deal with. Astral Vault God King had assembled the armies of the saint race and then took over military control for the good fortune Saint Sovereign. All of this had been done in a mere several months, but at this time, only half of humanity's elites had been evacuated. Summon an emergency meeting. This meeting was convened hastily, but all human Empyreans, including some human elites that had yet to evacuate, rapidly arrived. Humanity now ushered in the greatest crisis they had faced in history. Chapter 1926, Feather. Chapter 1926, Feather. From the moment the meeting was convened, the atmosphere was somber and dignified. In the divine realm there were still many human elites who had yet to be gathered. If the Empyreans were to collectively evacuate the divine realm at this time, then those elites remaining as well as their descendants would be slaughtered. We must speed up the evacuation. An Empyrean suggested. In truth, the so-called speeding up of the evacuation was simply raising the threshold. They would only bring the most outstanding inheritances and geniuses. Ordinary geniuses would be left behind to fight for themselves. That doesn't make sense. There are some peak talents in the innermost depths of the divine realm, even in some medium and small worlds. They are too far away for us to reach. Even if we raised the threshold, they still wouldn't be able to catch up in time. Another Empyrean argued. Concerning the invasion of the saints, everyone had their own opinions. But during this time, Divine Dream remained silent. A considerable number of people looked towards Divine Dream, waiting for her to express her intentions. By this time Divine Dream had long become the true and unanimous leader of humanity. It could be said that every decision she made concerned the future of the human race. At this time, Divine Dream's expression was earnest, but her breathing wasn't uneven at all. She was as composed and tranquil as a placid lake. She opened her mouth. Her voice was slow and unhurried, but each syllable she spoke was filled with a potent power. We will meet them head-on. What? Empyrean Divine Dream's words shocked all the Empyreans and young elites present. Meet the saints head-on? The saints had a true divinity powerhouse leading their armies to war. Wasn't fighting them the same as fighting a hopeless battle? How can we possibly do that? A red-robed Empyrean stood up to oppose. I didn't say that we must win. The divine realm is the homeland of humanity, and we are the protectors of the human race as well as gods to countless trillions of quadrillions of lives. Just because the saints have invaded doesn't mean we can abandon all our subjects like this. Even if it is for the future of humanity, I cannot accept such an excuse. There must be some people staying behind in order to stand responsible for humanity. Moreover, we have to fight because we must delay for more time to evacuate. Half of the elites still haven't evacuated, and we will not discard them. As Divine Dream spoke to her, she stood up. I will remain, and meet the saints myself. Among you all, those who voluntarily choose to stay behind may do so. The others will leave the divine realm and go to the wild universe. As Divine Dream spoke, many people were panic-stricken. Divine Dream wanted to stay in the divine realm? No. Absolutely not. This was because to the current human race, Divine Dream's role was even more important than Lin Ming's. Whether it was fighting their way into the wilds of the 33 heavens or returning to the divine realm in the future, none of this could be done without Divine Dream. At this time, 3 Lives Old Man stood up and slowly shook his head. Divine Dream. It's enough that I stay behind. I do not have much time remaining, and for me to go to the wild universe is just a waste. I have already decided to stay in the divine realm and leave behind a lasting memory for the saints. Although 3 Lives Old Man seemed on the verge of death, he was still an existence that had lived for 300 million years. No one dared to underestimate him, nor did anyone know what cards he had hidden up his sleeves. In particular, during the war against the saints, 3 Lives Old Man had long since decided to martyr himself. A desperate and reckless peak Empyrean was a force that even a true divinity couldn't ignore. After 3 Lives Old Man spoke, another Empyrean stood up. Although my human race has declined, our pride hasn't. Even if we are to be defeated, we will be defeated with dignity. I will also stay behind. I will also remain. Another old Empyrean stood up. Without exception, all of these Empyreans were in the waning years of their lives. Their cultivations had already started to drop. The future of humanity belonged to the young. Going to the wild universe was the same as beginning from zero. These old Empyreans didn't have that much time to wait. One after another, elderly Empyreans stood up and decided to stay behind. Even old Empyreans of the ancient races planned to stay in the divine realm. Only Empyreans in their prime like Di Wuhen and Tabague would go to the wild universe and help develop the land there. These Empyreans were the hope of the ancient races. At the same time, these old Empyreans also wanted to stop Empyrean Divine Dream. No matter what, she couldn't be allowed to stay in the divine realm to die. That would be far too great a loss. Humanity still needed her leadership. Divine Dream shook her head. I am staying behind, but not to die. I am confident that I can survive and eventually leave. And the other Empyreans that stay behind don't necessarily need to sacrifice themselves. Divine Dream's words left the other Empyreans shocked. She was planning on leading the human Empyreans to resist a true divinity, yet she still had the means to withdraw. If it is the good fortune Saint Sovereign, then my chances are much slimmer. But the other true divinities aren't necessarily invincible. Don't forget, we have the Ark of Hope. Divine Dream added. With the Ark of Hope, escape was indeed a possibility. At this time, Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. Just as he was about to speak, Divine Dream looked straight towards him and directly shot down whatever plan he was going to propose. Do not even mention it. You must leave. Moreover, you must leave now. Lin Ming originally wanted to say that the Ark of Hope could display the strongest might in his hands, but Divine Dream was firm in her decision. Lin Ming, as long as you live, then you will be the greatest threat to the saints. In this battle to delay for time, you are not needed. Rather, your appearance will cause the saints to try and kill you no matter what price they have to pay, causing the exact opposite of the effect that we want. Divine Dream's words were approved by the many Empyreans present. Lin Ming had to leave. Staying was not worth the cost. Lin Ming agreed. After Divine Dream made her decision, the meeting ended. The Ark of Hope remained at Mount Potala. Lin Ming and other young elites were led to the back mountains of Mount Potala by some younger Empyreans. Here, there was a crowd of spirit ships, spirit boats, and divine palaces. There were even soaring spirit birds and other mounts. After a short period of time, Lin Ming and the others would board a spirit ship and travel to the wild universe. Many people hugged and gave their farewells. Hey boy, the human race is going to depend on you. When you go to the wild universe, make sure you slaughter your way until you shake up the world. Vast Universe lightly punched Lin Ming's chest. Lin Ming was a young elite who had emerged from the first martial meeting that was managed by Vast Universe and Divine Dream. He could be called a part of their lineage. Lin Ming had all sorts of feelings running through his mind. He didn't speak, only nodding and deeply bowing to Empyrean Vast Universe. Empyrean Vast Universe didn't leave, he chose to remain with Divine Dream. He was Divine Dream's old comrade-in-arms as well as an old friend. He was also in his prime, but he steadfastly chose to remain because he believed in Divine Dream and because he also believed in himself. He didn't intend to die in battle, but he did want to fight for a little bit more time for humanity. Only like this could he give an answer to the countless human lives of the divine realm. This parting could be called a parting of life and death. Lin Ming took a deep breath and stepped onto the spirit ship, not turning back to look. But as Lin Ming stepped onto the spirit ship, there was something that occurred which no one noticed. A spirit bird flying in the skies came to a halt above the spirit ship. It spun around, and then a single feather fell off this bird, slowly fluttering downwards. This feather was common and indistinguishable from an ordinary feather. But as it fell atop the spirit ship, it slowly stuck to the surface and then melted into the hull, vanishing from sight. Chapter 1927, Parting. Chapter 1927, Parting. The Infinite Universe, the Vast and Boundless Space. A massive spirit ship quietly sped through the starry space. This spirit ship was named Epoch. The name signified humanity's wish to usher in a new epoch, one where their people would rise to glory once more. During this trip, Epoch would have to pass through over a dozen great worlds of the divine realm before finally arriving at a small world called the Blusnow realm. This small world was hidden within a chaotic ocean of stars. Without accurate coordinates and a guide, it was basically impossible to find this land. The end of the Blusnow realm pushed up against the God-lamenting wall. And behind this God-lamenting wall was another universe of the 33 heavens, a wild universe. Because the God-lamenting wall separating the wild universes had never weakened, this universe hadn't had an intelligent humanoid life form step foot in it for a long time. Several months ago, 20 human Empyreans were sent to the Blusnow realm in order to join together and form a connection through the God-lamenting wall using the Azura decree and then maintain it. Following that, the elites of humanity passed through this connection and entered the wild universe. They quickly sped towards the nearest lands, establishing their own bases to develop the area. Epoch was an Empyrean-level spirit treasure spirit ship. It was naturally far slower than the Ark of Hope, and from start to finish, it would require 2 months to reach its destination. And during this long travel, many matters occurred. For instance, the Great War between the remaining Empyreans and the Saints. In a grand hall within Epoch, many young elites had gathered. Dragon Fang, Han Kai, Xiao Moxian, Jun Blue Moon, Lin Ming, and even the Celestial Smokeless. These young elites had reunited once again. Back during the Divine Realm First Martial Meeting, these young elites had been 20 to 40 years of age. They were high-spirited back then, looking to climb to the highest mountaintops. They showed their abilities above the arena stage. They attracted the attention of the cosmos and became renowned to trillions of quadrillions of people. That was an incomparably magnificent time, and after 100 years of life, they reunited once more. Although they each made considerable progress in their strengths, they actually gathered under such circumstances. Facing the great calamity of the divine realm, they had been forced to flee from their homeland and become fugitives. At this time, Xiao Moxian was looking out a porthole, gazing upon the endless starry skies. She rubbed her belly. It was unknown just what she was thinking. To abandon her homeland and go to an unknown world, it was inevitable that she would feel a deep melancholy in her heart. But what she could rejoice in was that Lin Ming would always be there at her side to accompany her. She silently looked at Lin Ming as he meditated in the grand hall. Xiao Moxian pursed her lips. In this great calamity, Lin Ming had become nearly her everything. I wonder how the seniors of my people and Empyrean Divine Dream are doing right now. Smokeless whispered, finding it hard to calm her heart. Beside her, Han Kai was praying sutras and twisting the Buddha beads in his hands, deep in meditation. Dragon Fang embraced his black sword. He had a pot of wine in his hand and was quietly drinking from it. At some time, Dragon Fang filled a cup of wine. Then he silently raised it up in the air and slowly sprinkled it to the ground. Seeing this, Lin Ming sighed. He knew that Dragon Fang was giving his farewells to his master. In this bitter battle between the humans and saints, Divine Dream, Vast Universe, and some others might be able to return safely. But the older Empyreans had already entered the fray with the determination to die. Lin Ming stood up and walked over to Dragon Fang. He joined him in drinking a cup of wine. But at this time, his mind shivered and he nearly fell over. Big brother Lin, what's happening? Xiao Moxian had been looking at Lin Ming and his sudden reaction had left her startled. With his cultivation, it was impossible that he would nearly tumble over for no reason at all. Lin Ming. The others stood up, all of them looking at Lin Ming with concern. Now was an extremely tense time. Even if they were fleeing to a relatively safe universe, all of them were on guard for any abnormalities. Lin Ming's sudden change left them wary. I'm fine. Lin Ming waved his hand, his complexion somewhat ill. Just now, he had clearly felt an indescribable divine sense sweep through this hall, nearly causing his mind to fall to illusion. During this time his mind had completely blanked out, and he felt as if a feather had fallen into his spiritual sea, slowly immersing within it. This feather was simple like an ordinary feather, but this ordinariness was what scared Lin Ming. This was the wisp of someone's divine sense mark. He had been locked onto by someone. And, what stunned Lin Ming the most was that no one else had detected it. If he was the only one who had sensed it, then that meant this divine sense was most likely aimed at a single person. This thought left Lin Ming's palms cold with sweat. Not to mention the terrifying intensity of that divine sense, there was also the fact that this other party's divine sense had quietly penetrated through the protective wards of Epoch without alarming the many peak Empyreans on board. This was not something an Empyrean could accomplish. This other party. True divinity. In that moment, Lin Ming felt as if he had fallen into a sea of ice. He had been locked onto by a true divinity. This was incomparably horrifying information. Without the peak masters of the divine realm like Divine Dream present, there was no one on this entire spirit ship capable of contending with a true divinity. Moreover, even the Ark of Hope wasn't here. They didn't even have the Azura decrees that could wound a true divinity. In this situation, to be locked onto by a true divinity was the same as being sentenced to death. Is it intentionally targeting me? Or was it an unconscious probing? Lin Ming's limbs were icy cold. He didn't believe that there was a true divinity randomly passing by, just happening to use their divine sense to investigate this spirit ship. With a 99% certainty, this other party had come for him. Big brother Lin, just what is going on? Xiao Moxian anxiously looked at Lin Ming, worry filling her face. Benefactor Lin, what happened just now? At this time there is no need to hide anything from us. We must all be on the same boat. All these difficulties can be solved together. If we cannot solve them, then there are also the Empyreans here that can help. Han Kai slowly said. Lin Ming bitterly sighed in his heart. This was something that not even an Empyrean could fix. "I'm fine. I just felt an intense foreboding premonition, as if something unfortunate is going to occur." Lin Ming eventually didn't speak the truth. This was because he wasn't absolutely sure, and also because there was no meaning in saying it anyways. Instead, it would cause Xiao Moxian and the others to panic for no good reason. At this moment, no one here could stop a true divinity. It would be the same as telling everyone that he was going to die. Moreover, the worst thing was that once this true divinity overtook Epoch, everyone in this spirit ship would be buried along with her. Lin Ming's words left everyone half doubting and half believing him. Indeed, once a martial artist's destiny accumulated to a certain level, they could indeed have strange premonitions which could allow them to avoid disasters. Lin Ming's unlucky premonition just now, could there have been some problem at the front lines? Did Empyrean Divine Dream encounter an accident? Gloomy clouds formed over everyone's hearts. Divine Dream was the spiritual pillar of humanity. If she perished, not to mention the loss in strength it would mean for the human race, but the morale of the people would fall through the ground. Finally, the group quieted down. During this time Lin Ming gripped his fists, his heart and mind on pins and needles, filled with unease. That terrifying sense was like the summons of a death god. Would it come again? Lin Ming thought. And indeed, after a quarter hour, that terrifying sense covered Lin Ming. This time, the sense was extremely light, like a feather gently crossing over Lin Ming's mind. But the resulting pressure nearly caused his spiritual sea to fall into chaos. Moreover, this sense brought with it a faint and clear, killing intent. As delicate as a feather, a killing intent that left one drowning in desperation. A true divinity had truly locked onto him. This feather was the mark of a true divinity. Back in the Soul World's Akashic Dream universe, the great Brahmic God King had used a similar method to mark Lin Ming. This was a transcendent secret technique. When a person left behind blood, skin, hair, or even items they used before, these things would be marked with their vital characteristics. Then, by paying a sufficient price and using a certain amount of soul force, one could search the vast cosmos for these vital characteristics and mark the position of the person. In the past, the great Brahmic God King hadn't searched too large an area. It was normal for Lin Ming to be found by him. But this time, the other party was able to search the entire divine realm with its 3,000 great worlds and countless other smaller worlds to find and lock onto Lin Ming all the same. Such supernatural powers left Lin Ming drowning in despair. Heavens, do you really wish for my end? I have resolved myself to climb to the peak of martial arts, yet I must perish here? Lin Ming mirthlessly smiled. The saints really thought highly of him. If he wasn't wrong, then the saints had especially sent a true divinity to hunt him down and kill him. Currently he didn't even have the strength to fight an Empyrean, but now the enemy had sent a true divinity to kill him. They had truly laid down the capital. They wanted to take advantage of the time before he had grown to erase him from existence, forever severing any future troubles. Lin Ming stood up in an absent-minded daze. From when he had stepped upon his road of martial arts until now, he had faced death numerous times. But, never before had he felt despair like today. Lin Ming, you. Smokeless, Han Kai, Jun Blue Moon, and the others all looked at Lin Ming. They felt that something was wrong. What is going on? What are you trying to hide? Nothing. Lin Ming suddenly smiled, his smile somewhat sad. I'm sorry, I don't think I can go to the wild universe with you all and open up a new world. What? Lin Ming's few words left everyone shocked. In particular, Xiao Moxian felt her heart shrink. Why? Tears began to appear at the corners of Xiao Moxian's eyes. She bit her lips and stared at Lin Ming, her voice shaking. Lin Ming looked at Xiao Moxian, his heart mourning. He couldn't remain on this spirit ship because it would only mean everyone here dying in vain. Even humanity's gathering point would be exposed. He wanted to say that he had been locked onto by a true divinity, but as he saw Xiao Moxian's teary eyes he couldn't bring himself to say the words. He didn't want his last image of Xiao Moxian before he left to be that of her dying inside. Moreover, he knew that if he said such words, if Xiao Moxian knew he would die without a doubt, she would not let him leave alone. She would die with him. Finally, Lin Ming said, "There are some matters I must attend to. I will be leaving first." Hearing Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian's response was to quickly rush over and throw herself into his arms. She tightly grasped him as if letting go would mean losing him forever. "Take me with you." Xiao Moxian had already made up her mind to never let go. She had a faint premonition in her mind that after this parting, she would not see Lin Ming again. Lin Ming could feel Xiao Moxian gently trembling in his arms and her vulnerable heart. He didn't know just what taste was in his heart, but eventually he pushed her away. His expression was resolute as he said, "Stop this nonsense. Not only will you not be able to help me, but you will only drag me down. If so, then I will die for sure." Lin Ming's heartless words and his heartless expression left Xiao Moxian stunned. The other young elites were also helpless to do anything, but they knew something had happened with Lin Ming. It was just that he wasn't willing to tell them. "If you go like this, the Empyreans on board will not agree." Jun Bluemoon frowned. Although he didn't know what was happening, he could faintly feel that the reason Lin Ming left was for the lives of everyone on board. At these times, none of us fear death. What happened? Dragon Fang stated in a manner more direct than the others. He pulled out his sword. "I will explain myself to the guiding Empyreans. If I leave, there is still a chance to live. If I stay, I will die." Lin Ming turned around after he spoke. To leave the spirit ship, he needed to inform the Empyreans in the main control room so that they could open the doors. At this time, Xiao Moxian held on to Lin Ming once more. "Big brother Lin," Xiao Moxian seemed to exhaust all of her strength as she grabbed Lin Ming's hand. Her tone was nearly that of begging. "Do you remember the Monster Emperor's grand longevity feast where the good fortune Saint Sun came to propose marriage to me, but you defeated him and married me instead? The you of the longevity feast was strong, aggressive, unstoppable. Numerous rulers of the universe were suppressed by you. And that was also the happiest day of my life. I have given up my race, abandoned my grandfather, and chosen to follow you to the wild universe. Even so, I have never regretted my decisions, not once, because no matter what I still have you. But, do you want me to lose even you?" Xiao Moxian's words were like a knife that thrust into Lin Ming's heart. Lin Ming's body shook. His heart hurt so much he couldn't even take a breath. He turned to Xiao Moxian to see her crying. Finally, he held on to her. He leaned down to her ears and said in a gentle voice, "Look after our child. It is the continuation of my life." Lin Ming no longer tarried. He stepped away, leaving behind the mourning and shaking Xiao Moxian. She helplessly collapsed against a wall, staring at Lin Ming's back as he vanished into the corridors of the ship. The hatch leading out of Epoch opened. A frail figure silently departed from the spirit ship, heading deep into space. Lin Ming didn't conceal anything from the Empyreans leading the ship and explained everything he could. Although everyone was willing to join Lin Ming in blood-filled battle, senselessly sacrificing everyone was meaningless. Moreover, those on board Epoch were the future hopes of humanity. Like this, Lin Ming left. In the infinite cosmos, Lin Ming's form appeared more and more lonely. Life really is small. Lin Ming looked at the endless space around him. This world would exist for dozens of billions of years or even trillions of years. Compared to the universe, his life was only a short moment. Even all those once peerless rulers of history had disappeared by now, turned to dust. Years from now, would he also be nothing but a grain of dust? Chapter 1928, Soaring Feather God King. Chapter 1928, Soaring Feather God King. In the boundless starry space, Lin Ming took out Primordius' heavenly palace from his inner world. This was an Empyrean spirit treasure left behind by Empyrean Primordius that had saved his life several times before. And at this moment when Lin Ming distracted a saint true divinity by himself, all he had accompanying him was Primordius' palace. Lin Ming only had a peak Holy Lord cultivation, but he was actually being chased down by a true divinity. This was the same as being sentenced to death. But Lin Ming hadn't given up the fight just yet. In truth, he had already come up with an escape plan, but the caveat was that the chances of success were so low it was depressing. Lin Ming didn't immediately start his plan. Rather, he controlled Primordius' heavenly palace and began a great void shift. He wanted to go as far away from Epoch as possible to avoid drawing them into his disaster. The lives on board that spirit ship were all extremely important to Lin Ming. Not only were they the hopes of humanity, but they were also his friends, his wife, his child. He couldn't allow anything to happen to Epoch. He flew deep into the starry space. And at this time, his heart suddenly shook and his complexion changed. Just then, a voice echoed in his mind. It was a woman's voice, one that was faint and cold. It seems you left your companions. This mysterious woman slowly spoke. Lin Ming was startled and he reflexively grit his teeth. He didn't reply. He knew that the one speaking was the true divinity who was hunting him down. This other party was a woman. Lin Ming began to panic. His current position was at most several billion miles away from Epoch. If this Grim Reaper woman chose to kill him and then chase after Epoch, she could definitely overtake them. The consequences would be inconceivable. It seems you are worried. The woman's tone held a hint of curiosity. Are you worried about the lives of your companions? I'm quite surprised. Your own life is in a precarious state and yet you still have the mind to worry about others. You left the spirit ship on your own initiative. Is it because you want to sacrifice yourself to guarantee that your companions will live on? It is difficult for me to understand why you made this decision, but I still admire your courage in making such a choice at this time. In order to show my respect, I will tell you my name. I am called Soaring Feather. Soaring Feather. Soaring Feather God King? Lin Ming had never heard of this name before. There was only a small number of true divinities in the 33 heavens, but few people could state the exact number of them. Most true divinities were in a semi-reclusive state and were all powerful and mystical existences. You can rest assured that I have no interest in killing the others. The reason I am here today is because I was entrusted with this task by someone else, and that task was only to kill you. Once you die, I will naturally leave. The woman's voice echoed in Lin Ming's ears. Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. Someone entrusted you with this task? Yes. I owe a favor. I just never thought that they would want me to repay it by hunting down and killing a holy lord. Really, this is just unbelievable. I see, Lin Ming sighed. Not every saint true divinity wanted to crush humanity into the ground. At the very least, Epoch wouldn't be destroyed. However, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had actually commanded the assistance of two true divinities, one to lead the armies into the divine realm and the other to kill him. To have the good fortune Saint Sovereign consider him such a serious threat, Lin Ming was left speechless. A peak holy lord being hunted down by a true divinity was simply the most ludicrous joke in the world. Lin Ming slowed down and finally came to a stop. Lin Ming flew out from Primordius' heavenly palace and put it away. Then, he took out a token from his spatial ring. This token was extremely ancient and numerous strange lines and runes were carved into its surface. Azura command. This mysterious woman was already near enough to Lin Ming that she could see his every action and movement. Moreover, she also knew of the tokens that the Azura Roadmaster had left behind in the past. Lin Ming's plan was to flee into the Azura Road. Then, he would enter tragic Death Valley. It was still a long time until the final trial started once more. If Lin Ming wanted to evade this mysterious woman, then there was only a single route open to him: to fly into tragic Death Valley. Tragic Death Valley was a death zone. Even if a peak Empyrean entered, they would still be trapped inside. But could a true divinity also be trapped? Lin Ming didn't know if tragic Death Valley could hold a true divinity. After all, 10 billion years had passed and the force field must have weakened. The most glaring example was the Azura decrees that the Azura Roadmaster left behind. Those treasures hadn't been able to kill the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Moreover, even if tragic Death Valley could trap this true divinity, it was unknown whether she knew of the situation of tragic Death Valley. If she were to choose to follow him inside, then it wouldn't matter if he could emerge later, because he would simply be killed by her within the valley itself. Drawing back, even if Soaring Feather didn't chase after him, Lin Ming would become a turtle in a jar after entering tragic Death Valley. 1 year outside was equivalent to 10 years within. If tragic Death Valley was blocked off by soaring feather, when would Lin Ming be forced to stay within until? In closed-door seclusion in the dark, it would be impossible to cultivate to the realm of a true divinity. Once the good fortune Saint Sovereign's wounds were healed and he slaughtered his way into the Azura Road, would Lin Ming, who would still be stranded in tragic Death Valley, still have any way to live? All sorts of thoughts flashed through Lin Ming's mind. Moreover, it was possible that Lin Ming would be overtaken by soaring feather before he entered tragic Death Valley. Thinking of this, Lin Ming bitterly realized just how slim his hopes of escape were. Soaring Feather God King's voice echoed in Lin Ming's spiritual sea once more. You took out the Azura command. Do you plan on entering the Azura Road? That only means you will die that much faster. The Azura Road was not some forbidden land. As long as there was an Azura command to serve as an entrance, anyone could enter. And for a true divinity that could make a connection through the God-lamenting wall, wanting to enter the Azura Road was far easier. If Lin Ming wished to flee into the Azura Road, then Soaring Feather God King would chase after him. Although the Azura Road was a vast world, it was far smaller than the divine realm. Once Soaring Feather God King and Lin Ming entered together, the distance between them would be shortened. Lin Ming couldn't be sure where in the Azura Road he would be transmitted, or how far he would be from tragic Death Valley. He would have to determine just where he was to know where tragic Death Valley was. However, things were different for Soaring Feather God King. She had left a true divinity mark on Lin Ming so she could chase straight towards him. Before Lin Ming had figured everything out, Soaring Feather God King might have already reached him. If so, then it was possible Lin Ming didn't even have a chance to escape. However, no matter how uncertain things were, this was the only choice Lin Ming could make. Otherwise, he could only choose to die. With the Azura command in his hands, Lin Ming began to pour his energy into it. However, something was strange. According to Lin Ming's previous experience, he only needed an incense stick of time to enter the Azura Road. But now, a quarter hour had passed, and even though he had poured in a tremendous amount of energy, there was no response in the Azura command. Lin Ming frowned. He wildly poured in more energy, but the Azura command only faintly shimmered, not opening any spatial channel at all. What is happening? Lin Ming muttered, nervous. Was there a problem with the Azura command, or was there a limit to the number of uses? Would the heavens not even grant him this slim chance of survival? Transmit me, transmit me. Lin Ming poured in all of his energy, just like the time he operated the Azura primal god cannon. His body, energy, soul, every bit of his strength roared into the Azura command. He grit his teeth as his body was bathed in a brilliant divine light. Just as despair grew in his heart, at this time, the Azura command shook and the void behind Lin Ming began to crack open. Like a pair of large hands constantly pulling apart space fragments collapsed and scattered, revealing a pitch-black space channel. It was unknown just where this space channel went. Terrifying winds from space and time storms blew out from within. Lin Ming didn't doubt that even a planet would be blown to pieces if it were placed within. Lin Ming was immediately suspicious. Had there been some sort of mutation with the Azura command? However, now was not the time to hesitate. No matter what dangers were in the space channel, it wouldn't be worse than falling into the hands of that woman. Lin Ming flew into the space channel. However, just as he approached it, a massive gravitational force like a black hole directly drew him in. For a time, the world turned upside down. Lin Ming felt as if his entire body would be torn apart. Agonizing pain radiated throughout his whole body. This level of pain nearly caused him to faint. He grit his teeth, using his powerful willpower to keep himself awake. He knew that to faint here would mean everything was over. Chapter 1929a, A Beautiful Trap. Chapter 1929a, A Beautiful Trap. Within the void, a terrifying storm brewed. Lin Ming felt countless sharp knives cut into his body as a web of pain radiated throughout him. At this time, Lin Ming could already confirm that there was a problem with the Azura command as he used it to transmit him to the Azura Road. Perhaps it was because he had poured too much strength in, or perhaps it was because of some inexplicable relationship with the 3 Emperor Jades he had gathered, but in short, this transmission space channel was completely different from what he had experienced in the past. The last time he had entered the Azura Road, the space storm then wasn't even 1/10 as intense as it was now. If a martial artist weaker than himself was sucked into this space storm, they would have already become ground meat. Peng! With a solid thumping sound, Lin Ming felt as if he had struck something hard, nearly fainting in the process. In the next moment, a cool breeze passed over his skin. He opened his eyes and saw that he was in a bleak and desolate grey world. Gloomy clouds floated high in the skies and the light here was dim. Scattered rocks covered the ground. These rocks were all of similar size and shape, and they also looked somewhat familiar. As Lin Ming looked closer, he could see that they weren't rocks but shattered stone tablets. The writings on the stone tablets had long worn away and were incomparably strange. As Lin Ming stepped through this desolate land, he felt as if his entire being was fiercely suppressed. Where was he? Lin Ming had no idea where he could be. He spread out his divine sense but couldn't find the edges of this world. He took out the Azura command and looked at it. Then, he sucked in a light breath of air. That plain-looking Azura command had cracked in half. It was unable to be used again. What had happened? An absurd feeling appeared in Lin Ming's mind, as if the world he was in was the true world and everything he had experienced before had been nothing but an illusion. From the examination of the 7 profound martial house, the great tournament of the 7 profound valleys, his arrival at the Holy Demon Continent, the Divine Realm first martial meeting, the invasion of the saints, it was like all of that had been nothing but a dream. These sorts of bewildering thoughts left Lin Ming flustered. But at this time, Lin Ming's mind shook. He felt a weak sense gently and swiftly pass over him before vanishing. This was Soaring Feather God King's divine sense. Such a real and deadly killing intent caused Lin Ming to calm down. The strange dreamlike feeling of before also disappeared. Composing himself, Lin Ming looked within himself and saw that the true divinity mark that Soaring Feather God King left within him was still there. He could even feel the spiritual connection between him and Soaring Feather God King, with the exception that this connection was much weaker than before. As if he and Soaring Feather God King were in 2 different worlds. Perhaps after another period of time, she would find him. Thinking of this, Lin Ming wryly smiled. He didn't know how much time he had left to live. If there was some accident with the transmission, then was this still the Azura Road? If so, where was it in the Azura Road? Could it be that this was deep within the Great Desolate? Lin Ming thought of the Great Desolate in the Azura Road. It was said to be a natural wall that existed between the inner Azura Road and outer Azura Road. Rumors said that the Azura Road's Great Desolate was endless and not even a peak Empyrean dared to enter its depths. However, as to what was within those depths, that remained a riddle. Even so, perhaps even the depths of the Great Desolate couldn't stop a true divinity. In this universe there didn't seem to be anything that could block the path of a true divinity. Even the God-lamenting wall could be broken through if a true divinity paid a great price. Soaring Feather God King's mark hadn't weakened at all. In this completely strange and unknown world, Lin Ming had no idea what he could do. He began to aimlessly search through this world, hoping to discover some favorable turn. However, this seemed to be an endlessly barren world. There wasn't even a strand of grass or a little bug. In this boundless world, Lin Ming walked alone. Weak light fell down from above, casting long shadows on the ground. His tiny figure appeared increasingly desolate on this gloomy world. In that moment, Lin Ming truly felt an unprecedented solitude. He suddenly missed Xiao Moxian, missed his own child, missed Mu Qianyu, missed Qin Xingxuan, missed his parents. He walked forwards. The true divinity mark that Soaring Feather God King left on him was like a life-sucking curse. From time to time it was strong, from time to time it weakened, but it never left him. Lin Ming didn't know just what was occurring outside. Did Empyrean Divine Dream manage to escape? Did Xiao Moxian and his child arrive in the wild universe safely? In a different universe, would his wives and his child live well? Humanity, was there still a chance for them to rise from the dirt? Towards all of this, Lin Ming's mind was filled with worries. He had always been strong of will. For the past 150-some years, even in his most difficult times and even when he suffered the most, he had never given up. He deeply loved life. He yearned to reach the peak of martial arts. He blazed a path forwards, without fear. He fought for his family, friends, and for himself. He didn't know how many rivals he had forced down, how many times he had turned the tide. Xian Wuji, Yang Yun, Tian Mingzi, Good Fortune Saint Sun, powerful enemies were outstrategized by Lin Ming or overwhelmed by him. One after another, they suffered defeat beneath Lin Ming's hands. In Lin Ming's life, he had rarely been defeated. He had never been as lost and confused as he was today. Perhaps no matter how strong a person was, they also had their fragile side. No matter how outstanding a person was, there would always be a day when they fell into distress. Lin Ming continued walking, and walking. He discovered that this bleak world had no origin energy, and energy was even being drawn out from his own body. He didn't know how many days he walked for. Because energy was continuously absorbed by the surrounding wilderness, he felt exhausted. This world was extremely strange. He even seemed like a mortal, hunger and thirst pressing him from all sides. He knew that this was the result of his energy being exhausted, otherwise he simply wouldn't need food and water. He sat down on a stone tablet. This stone tablet was cold and pieces of ice covered it. He broke off a piece of ice and placed it in his mouth. The melted ice brought with it the bitter taste of soil. The water moistened Lin Ming's parched throat, causing him to feel something faintly familiar. But at this time, on the far-off horizon, Lin Ming saw someone's shadow. His mind shook as he saw this. He sprung up. This person's figure rapidly vanished. But Lin Ming could confirm that he absolutely hadn't misread. Moreover, it seemed to be that of a woman. Soaring Feather God King? This thought passed through Lin Ming's mind, but he couldn't confirm it. Yet he didn't hesitate. He headed straight towards this person's shadow. He didn't wildly run nor did he fly. He walked forwards one step at a time, slowly drawing out the black dragon spear. No matter who she was, Lin Ming would face her. If it was Soaring Feather God King, then he wouldn't be able to escape anyways. However, when he truly arrived at the horizon and saw what lay before him, he was startled. Before him was a giant mirror that towered into the skies. This mirror resembled the cold ice mirror that Lin Ming had seen in the Azura Forbidden Zone. It seemed to contain an entirely different world. The other world contained fresh flowers and trees, birds and animals. It stood in stark contrast to this bleak land. And the surface of this mirror was the entrance to the other world. How come this is like the cold ice mirror left behind by the Azura Roadmaster? Lin Ming wasn't sure if this was a coincidence. He stepped through the mirror. Lush, fresh grass was thick beneath his feet and all sorts of spirit plants bloomed brightly. A rainbow of spirit birds soared through the blue skies. Immortal apes shuttled back and forth in the verdant jungles. Bright sunlight fell from the skies, sparkling across gurgling spirit springs in bursts of auspicious light. Lin Ming was dazed for a long time. Although the difference was only a single step, one side was a dead land and the other side was a paradise. He had walked through the wilderness for far too long. As he stepped into this mirror world and felt the air that was thick with life, he felt as if everything that occurred was a lifetime ago. Heaven and earth origin energy had returned. His body began to spontaneously absorb this rich heaven and earth origin energy, continuously restoring itself. He greedily breathed in the air. He drank from the spirit springs and ate the spirit fruit until his strength was completely restored and slowly returned to its peak state. He walked forwards. He wanted to see who this woman was. He didn't find a woman, but he did see a mountain. From the top of this mountain, infinite origin energy fell down, as if it were the source of origin energy in this mirror world. Lin Ming climbed up, slowly ascending the mountain. At the summit of the mountain, he saw a divine tree. Chapter 1929b, A Beautiful Trap. Chapter 1929b, A Beautiful Trap. This divine tree didn't have many leaves. Only a single old branch stretched out, twisting like a powerful dragon. On this branch were 2 strange fruits. These 2 fruits had runes of the great Tao condensed on them. They seemed like 100-million-year-old Tao fruits that had gathered the essence of the world, causing a person to drool upon seeing them and immediately want to eat them. Lin Ming was stunned for a long time. This was a heaven and earth divine medicine that had been born from this strange world. He hesitated for a moment and then reached out a hand, wanting to pick the fruits. But the moment he reached out a hand, one of the 2 fruits spontaneously flew into his hand. As if these fruits were fated to be with Lin Ming. What fruit is this? Lin Ming didn't know what this was, but he was sure that these fruits were no minor matter. They were absolutely pure treasures of the world. If he had to describe their grade, then they were at least at the peak true divinity level, or even higher. Could this be something planted by the Azura Roadmaster in the past? Lin Ming suddenly thought. Since he used the Azura command to come here, it wouldn't be strange if this fruit tree was related to the Azura Roadmaster. But the question was, if this really was a divine tree planted by the Azura Roadmaster, then wouldn't it have been growing here for 10 billion years? Was there a life form that could live longer than 10 billion years? Lin Ming looked at the fruit in his hand. The great Tao runes condensed on the fruits could not be fake. He hesitated and then took a bite. At this time he couldn't bother with considering how to use this fruit for alchemy, nor could he consider his own strength and whether or not his body could withstand eating such a Tao fruit. He was already in a desperate state. He fervently hoped for a favorable turn. He deeply desired to increase his strength. The peel of the fruit was very thin and the flesh was completely transparent, just like jelly. As he took a bite, it melted in his mouth, extremely sweet to the point that it left one intoxicated. Lin Ming vowed that he had never eaten something so delicious before. He had never been a gluttonous person, but as he ate this fruit he wished he could swallow it down. After a dozen some breaths of time, Lin Ming finished eating this fruit. He even licked clean his fingers and lips. Afterwards, he waited for the strength of the fruit to erupt within him. Generally speaking, the higher rank a heavenly material was, the more terrifying a strength it would erupt with. If a martial artist couldn't withstand this, then their body would explode and they would die. He planned to digest this fruit and then pick the second fruit. But, after waiting for an incense stick of time, there was no strength erupting within him. Instead, Lin Ming felt an unprecedented level of comfort. Heat flowed through him, spreading to every inch of his body, flooding his meridians, flesh, and blood. It even rose into his spiritual sea, causing him to feel intoxicated and tipsy. His body grew increasingly hot. His mind became dizzy as if he had drunk alcohol. His entire body was comfortable. He wanted to lie down on the ground and sleep. Beneath this divine tree, the thick and fragrant grass formed a natural bed. Just as Lin Ming thought of this, his heart chilled. A creeping feeling came over him. He turned to see that just 3 feet away, at some unknown time, a woman had appeared. It was like she had been standing there for a long time already, and because Lin Ming had eaten the fruit, he simply hadn't been able to detect her. This woman had black hair and her face was wrapped in a dark veil, making one unable to see her appearance. Her eyes were as deep as the night skies, so profound that one could be lost in them with a single glance. You. Lin Ming wanted to focus his gaze on this woman's face, but as he did he simply wasn't able to maintain the brief moment of soberness he just gained. A burning rush of heat and dizziness blazed up his body once more, slowing his reactions and even limiting his divine sense to within 3 feet of his body, making it impossible to discern who this woman was. Soaring Feather God King? Lin Ming immediately thought. He wanted to trace his spatial ring, but he found that his arms didn't obey him. What was going on? Lin Ming had a deep foreboding feeling. This woman seemed to be the woman he just saw. Had she purposefully lured him here to eat that fruit? From what Lin Ming had seen, this fruit should have been a Tao fruit that gathered 100 million years of the world's essence. It shouldn't be a poison. Moreover, looking at it broadly, even if this Tao fruit was a poison, it was inevitably an extremely precious poison. Just why waste it on him? This black-clothed woman was obviously much stronger than he was, so if she was able to easily kill him, why use poison? All sorts of mysteries crossed through Lin Ming's mind. He felt his consciousness become increasingly blurry, circling all around him. He staggered around, and because he was unable to stand, he slumped towards the black-clothed woman. Complex emotions revealed themselves in her eyes. She stood there like a fairy lost in the world, but she didn't avoid Lin Ming. Just as Lin Ming was about to fall into her arms, at the final moment he held onto her shoulders, using her to support himself. For a time, Lin Ming's face was mere inches away from hers. At such a close distance Lin Ming could smell the fragrance wafting off her body and see her two pupils that were like spring lakes. Lin Ming's heart shook. "You are Sheng Mai." Lin Ming was stunned. At such a close distance, he recognized that this woman was actually Sheng Mai. This familiar aura and these familiar eyes, he could not be mistaken. And Soaring Feather God King shouldn't be so bored as to try and trick him by changing her appearance into that of Sheng Mai. The black-clothed woman lightly sighed. She took off her veil, revealing her peerless looks, a face that could shame the moon and dim the world. Lin Ming had never seen Sheng Mai at such a close distance before. Her skin was flawless perfection and seemed to faintly radiate the brilliance of the moon. Her eyes were bright and deep, as if they contained undying stars. She was the goddess of the spiriters, a woman unparalleled in the world. Her body was covered in mysteries, making one forever unable to see her goals. But in the next moment, something incredibly surprising occurred. Sheng Mai stepped forwards and her arms twined beneath Lin Ming's arms, tightly holding onto him. For a time, a warm jade-like touch caressed his chest. The scent of a woman left the mind mesmerized. Never before had such a touch electrified Lin Ming so. But Lin Ming hadn't lost his mind. He instinctively wanted to push away Sheng Mai. Although he didn't know what the spiriters were planning, he knew that Sheng Mai wasn't an ally of humanity. You arranged for me to come here?" Lin Ming suddenly realized this possibility. When there had been an accident with the Azura command, the reason was not because of the Emperor Jades or because he had poured in too much energy, but because someone had deliberately manipulated it. Sheng Mai didn't speak. She held on to Lin Ming and looked at the mysterious fruit tree behind him. She reached out a hand and the remaining fruit flew into her grasp. Seeing this, Lin Ming's thoughts turned cold. What fruit is this? It comes from the Primeval Realm ruins, a strange fruit of the Dark Abyss. In this world it is unique. The great Tao of the world is condensed within it, and eating it has a great advantage to one's cultivation and foundation. But it possesses a devilish law that no one can resist. What? Lin Ming trembled. The Dark Abyss. He had heard this name before. The body of the abyssal that Empyrean Primordius seized as well as famine both came from the Dark Abyss. From such an evil and horrifying place, there was such a mysterious Tao fruit. This so-called devilish law was. Lin Ming suddenly discovered it was becoming increasingly difficult to control his body. An inexplicable desire rose from his loins, racing through him. In his chest, Sheng Mai's body seemed to contain an infinite charm that caused him to slowly lose all reason. "You made me eat an aphrodisiac." Lin Ming didn't dare to believe this. Just what was Sheng Mai planning? He could confirm that Sheng Mai possessed an unimaginably powerful pure yin strength. Through her 7 reincarnations her pure yin had never been taken. Instead, it had gathered and gathered, reaching an inconceivable level. If someone could take Sheng Mai's pure yin, then that would be an unimaginable advantage. But Lin Ming didn't believe that Sheng Mai would willingly offer him her pure yin. Then just what was happening? "Lin Ming, I'm sorry." Sheng Mai whispered into his ears. "You are too stubborn, too tenacious. If you chose to willingly leave with me for 100 million years, then you wouldn't have been reduced to such a state. I've already told you, you cannot win against them." Sheng Mai's voice was filled with regret. The scene she once portrayed had been the longing in her heart. However, because of Lin Ming's refusal, all those hopes had faded away. "If you are destined to be destroyed, then you might as well be destroyed by my hands." As Sheng Mai spoke to hear, her eyes began glistening with tears. She parted her red lips and sucked in a light breath. The mystical Tao fruit in her hand broke apart, melting away into the sweetest juice that flowed into her mouth. As she swallowed down this fruit, a burning heat also rose within her. Lin Ming was no longer able to control his body. He tried everything he could to suppress the flames of desire within him, but he lacked any ability to do so. This devilish enticement was too strong. Moreover, there was another point, and that was that the Sheng Mai in his chest was a perfect woman, an unrivaled beauty within the universe. Countless men had gone crazy for her. It's useless. This fruit has condensed the great Tao of the world and also contains a devilish law. No one can resist it, whether that is you or me. The fruit's potency had yet to fully stir within Sheng Mai. She was still awake as she and Lin Ming fell over onto the soft grass. Then, she slowly removed her clothing. The black clothes starkly contrasted against her flawless body that was as pale as white jade. Her long and slender legs, her impeccable figure, her full curves, her proud and arrogant charisma, her gentle fingers, every part of her was like a perfect piece of artwork. The naked Sheng Mai blended into the surrounding scenery, creating one of the most beautiful images in the world. Warm and dappled sunlight sprinkled onto Sheng Mai's figure. With the demonic rhythm, her body blurred within this light, making her an immortal goddess. She had never appeared naked in front of a man before, but at this moment she wasn't shy at all. She gently knelt down beside Lin Ming and poured herself atop his body. She held on to him and slowly kissed him. In that moment, an indescribable feeling passed through Lin Ming. He desperately tried to shove her away, but his body wouldn't listen to him. His arms crossed beneath her and gently held on to her. His burning hot body revealed a fierce response. What you want is, my eternal soul. Lin Ming struggled to speak. The last bit of brightness in his mind was soon about to flicker out. If you already planned this then, why wait until today? You clearly could have taken away my eternal soul at the soul world. Lin Ming panted. Because Sheng Mai was kissing him, his words were slurred. Sheng Mai nibbled on Lin Ming's ears. Her hot breath blew against his skin, containing a hot enticement. She gently said, I don't want to explain myself right now. After today, you and I will part forever, and this will be the last time we ever see each other. This will also be my life's most intimate and unforgettable time. I don't want to answer your question because doing so will disturb us. I hope that our union can be perfect. As Sheng Mai spoke, she placed her pale hands against his chest. Lin Ming's clothing completely vanished, revealing his solid and muscular body. Her eyes were wet with tears and she quietly said, Lin Ming, between you and me, there shouldn't have been such a result. Although nothing can reverse what is done, in the future when I am alone, suffering the long days as I walk to the ends of the universe, I will remember you, and I will remember the you that walked into my heart. I will cherish this memory for all of time. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.